everyone hear me? Can everyone hear me? Hello? All right, I'd like to call to order the Village of Biscayne Park regular commission meeting for Tuesday, February 3rd, 2015. It's 7 p.m. Roll call, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Coviello.
Here.
Vice Mayor Jonas.
You betcha.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Ross.
Here.
Commissioner Watts.
All right, everyone would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for attending this evening. We will start with a presentation, item 4A, swearing in of our new Reserve Police Officer.
Chief McKenna is going to do a brief presentation.
Everybody, commissioners, we're very, very happy to give a welcome to the Biscayne Park Police Department. We're very happy to welcome to the Biscayne Park Police Department Max John Charles. He's a lifelong resident of Miami-Dade County. He has completed 939 hours of basic police recruit training, passed state certification. He's going to be a reserve police officer at this time. He works at a local bank. That's his regular career. Max has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and a master's degree in business administration. Village clerk is going to swear him in, and his wife is going to present his shield to him. Did you give him the shield? Did you get the shield? Yes. No.
So the camera can get you. Okay. I, Max Jean Charles,
I, Max Jean Charles,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support,
that I will support,
protect, and defend
protect, and defend
the Constitution and government
the Constitution and government
of the United States
of the United States
and the state of Florida
and the state of Florida
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
both foreign and domestic,
both foreign and domestic,
and I will bear true faith
and I will bear true faith
and allegiance
to the same,
and that I am entitled
to hold office
under the Constitution,
and I will faithfully perform
and I will faithfully perform
all duties
of the office of Reserve Police Officer
for the Village of Biscayne Park Police Department,
in which I'm about to enter. So help me God. Thank you.
Yeah. She's scared to get
Walk back there with the commissioners. Thank you.
Yes. Congratulations.
thank you, Chief. Item 4B, we have a presentation from Becker Polykoff regarding the annexation process. Jeff, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, residents.
Caesar?
Okay, good evening. So, I guess this is my first report on the annexation. I just again want to thank the village for entrusting us with the your annexation efforts. I gave you all some handouts. If anyone wants, I have some extras. If you'd like to see what the commissioners are looking at. So we've been hard at this annexation. There were two main reasons we were retained by the village. One was to push the annexation through Miami-Dade County, and then the other part was to collect the signatures that we needed in order to complete our application. One we thought was going to be harder than the other, and it turns out it's been a couple of surprises. So I'll talk about some of those and as we go on with the presentation. So. The requirement, I'll tell you the good news, the requirement which we thought was going to be difficult was to collect the signatures. According to your package, it was certified that you had 283 voters in the area. We needed to collect signatures from 20% of those voters, which is 56 signatures. We were able to, just shortly after the holidays and the beginning of the year, once we figured out what was the best time to go and talk to people, we collected 93 signatures, which I have now. Those still need to be verified by the supervisor of elections, but yeah, we have a cushion of about 40-some odd signatures. So I think we're okay with that. We stopped going out for signatures so that we could leave a cushion. If for some reason some of these signatures don't come back as unverifiable for some reason, there's a lot of folks still out there for us to go back to try to collect those signatures. So on that end, I think we're okay. We had tried some methods in the fall, tried to invite people over to some of the events that we were having over, and that didn't really work. What did work was just sending people over there, knocking door to door, and telling them, the benefits of what the benefits would be to become part of this great village, and we got signatures. So that portion, I think we're okay. Yes, Commissioner.
What proportion of people you approached signed?
Well, basically, this was a trial and error method. So originally what they did was they took the list, and the list that we got from the election department of who the electors were, and started going to those people on the list. What we found was that a lot of the folks that were on the list no longer lived there. And the problem you have, or the issue you have over there in both complexes, that these are rental communities, so people come and go. So it was just getting a little bit difficult. So we instructed the folks that were going out to just go knock door to door. And if we got to the list and it was someone on the list, then go ahead and talk to them. If we found someone they weren't on the list, but they were a voter, a registered voter, then get their name and their signature. And so that's the way it went. So it really varied on who we approached. I couldn't give you the percentages of who we approach and how many people signed, but I'd imagine it was a significant portion. For us to get to 93, we thought it would be a lot more difficult. I can tell you, and I spoke to Heidi on the first, we had tried a couple iterations of it. On the first day that we figured out what time was the best time, because it was just weird. People were home at different times. Once we figured that out, on the first day that we actually tried, I believe I called Heidi and told her we had gotten 20 signatures on the first day. And we pretty much had reached our goal of reaching the 56 signatures by the end of the week. So within 5 days, we had the 56 signatures, and then it was just getting the extra signatures, and that. So basically, it was really over a course of 2 weeks, maybe 2.5 weeks that we got all the signatures.
And Jeff, when do you anticipate resubmitting to the
This is going in this week. This Friday is what we hope. So the next part of it, which I'll talk about that, but the deadline we're facing now is that our application goes before the board, Planning Advisory Board, on March 3rd at 4 p.m. is what
So in addition
March
to
2nd. I'm sorry, March 2nd.
We are scheduled?
Yes, March 2nd. I spoke to them today.
and is the North Miami application also
North
being-
Miami's application is also there, which is a great segue to the other issue. So the other issue that you have is that, and that's what I gave you, is as we started this process, what we discovered was that your annexation area overlaps, or North Miami's annexation overlaps with your area, whichever way you want to look at it. So you basically have a conflict. And that's one of the things that we've been dealing with, is trying to figure out really what we need them to do is pull their application, because you have 2 applications going forward right now. Jose Fuentes isn't here, but he could tell you from his experience in the past, what happens is if there's conflict between 2 municipalities on an annexation, Planning Advisory Board just steps aside and says, this is your problem and we're not dealing with it. We are on the League of Cities Advisory Board for annexations, and I've talked to some cities. Actually, you were at one of the meetings, Mayor. There's at least one annexation involving 4 cities that's been out there for about 12 years. So it behooves the cities to come to a resolution, which is what we've been talking to North Miami. I've talked personally. Heidi was been there also. We've talked to the manager. We talked to the planning director. Talked to several of the elected officials about this issue and what's going to happen. We talked to the county. We talked to the county commissioners. You have a lot of support on the county commission for your application. That's what we've tried to explain to them. The issue in North Miami appears to be one of they filed their application first, so it's kind of the we filed first, and so ours should go and yours shouldn't. And what we've explained to them, and what I think is going to happen if these ever get in front of the county commission, is the county commission has to make the decision that's best for the residents of this county. And I think you all have a more compelling reason to have your annexation approved than they do. And that's what I've kind of told them. That's what I've heard. Everyone I've talked to at the county has all said the same thing. North Miami doesn't need this annexation. Biscayne Park needs this annexation. And that's kind of the message that we've been touting. We've had some success, I think. Without counting votes, I think we've convinced at least a couple of the council members in North Miami that this is probably the right thing to do. We actually have a meeting, or had a meeting, with the mayor scheduled to discuss. I don't know which way he's leaning. We had a meeting scheduled. He ended up getting sick, so we're trying to reschedule that meeting to get his from him. But we've gotten an email from at least one council member who said, absolutely what we think, which is give us an opportunity to go forward, and if our application doesn't go forward for whatever reason, then you all can have your application. Again, North Miami has about 4 annexation applications going on right now. Again, this is something that's compelling for the village of Biscayne Park, and not so much so for North Miami. And so that's really the message that we're trying to get out to them, and hoping that they pull their application.
And Jeff, the second point is there were 2 items that our application was deficient. Is the other item being addressed as well for this week's submittal?
What was the other one?
It was,
It was something relatively minor.
did not will create an enclave. It's something if perhaps you can draft language for us.
Sure. I mean, that's not a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, we actually, I wrote a letter. That's another point. Is I wrote a letter to when this was originally scheduled to be heard. God, when was that? December. I believe it was December. Both applications were scheduled to be heard in December, and on the morning of, North Miami still hadn't pulled their application. I ended up writing a letter on behalf of Biscayne Park. We actually discovered that the notice was improper. Informed the county that the notice was improper, and they canceled the meeting. But I actually wrote a letter on behalf of the village that got to the county, basically explaining that what North Miami's annexation would create is an enclave, and we cited kind of the arguments against it. So it's on record what we believe about the deficiencies of their application, and I don't think that we have those same deficiencies. And I think that there's a way around.
All right, so I just want to make sure that that second item is
Sure,
submitted
sure.
so that it's resolved this week.
Absolutely.
Other comments?
At one point, the county was talking about, and I think they went out to bid, for someone to develop a master plan for annexation throughout the county. It seems to me I saw the bid, maybe it was accepted, but where, are they anywhere?
It's not what anyone expected. You know, if you go on the county's website on annexation, there's a tab that says reports, and I just took a look at it today. I mean, there are reports on there going back decades on annexation. So the fact that they went out for another consultant for an annexation, everyone thought, oh wow, this is going to be great. There's going to be a plan, a master plan, and we've talked to the consultant, and it's not what everyone expects. This is just going to be one more report on whether annexation is good or annexation is bad. Supposedly, they're going to go out to the community and have public meetings to determine whether the public feels annexation is good or bad. It's nothing new. I mean, you can see, we already know what the report's going to say because there's a dozen other reports that say the same thing. So, at least at the legal cities, again, the annexation, what we're trying to say is, if you're going to do a report like this, if you're going to hire a consultant like this, then hire a consultant and give them real parameters for what you want from this project, and that's not what we've seen at all. As a matter of fact, one of the deficiencies, believe it or not, is they hired the same consultant the county hired is the consultant that was hired by Pinecrest. So in Pinecrest's case, Pinecrest hired these guys. They came out and said, yes, you should annex. Annexation is great. But now they're on the other side. We think it's a conflict that they're now representing the county, and I don't know how you reconcile whatever they come out with what they've already produced for Pinecrest, but we'll wait and see. But it's not anything new. To answer your question, it's not anything new.
But from what I recall, the study that the RFP that they sent out, the scope of the study was so broad, it covered topics like, shall all the unincorporated areas be incorporated? So it was very broad topics. Do you think that study is going to hold up the applications? In other words, is the county after PAB? Is this going to move forward to county commission? Or
When we've talked to them, we asked, is that going to hold up? And there is no moratorium at all because of the study. We thought that was going to be the idea, that hold off until the study comes out, but they told us no. And then as a matter of fact, as I said, we're scheduled on March 2nd to go forward, at least that portion of the process.
And they've been consistent in that message to us. That's why, if you recall, we got our application in before the study started. As long as you were in the pipeline, you were okay, has been the message we've always gotten from the county planning office.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jeff. Any other questions?
I have one, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, just a little off topic, but the people that you employed to go door to door, were they given a list of talking points or any literature to pass out?
We had developed talking points. We had sat down with staff and talked about some of the benefits of being with the village, and that's pretty much it. I mean, it was just a matter of talking to individuals, face
Is there
to
a
face.
copy of that we might have? I had asked for that.
We can send. I don't know if we actually we didn't produce anything. We just
I
sat
never
down and
received
talked. We just sat
anything,
down
'cause
and talked.
The commissioners
yeah.
asked me all along, and
Yeah.
every time I've asked for it,
Yeah, the only things that we produced was, and we're happy to give that to you, is the mailers that we sent. I think it was 2 mailers, one for the Halloween party and one for the December party. That's the only thing that we physically drafted and handed to anyone. Everything else has just been talking to folks.
And the Halloween one is the only one I saw, which was basically a replication of our flyer.
I
And
know,
I
I
think I
remember
shared
that.
that with
Yeah.
you.
All right. Anything else?
So this whole thing comes to a halt over the conflict between us and North Miami.
Unfortunately, if we can't resolve that, then yeah, what we think is going to happen is it's going to go forward and no decision is going to be made, and until the 2 municipalities resolve it, I don't think it's going to go anywhere. But again, we're doing everything we can to resolve it. I think we're close. I don't want to say that until, I mean, it's obviously they've got to make the decision. And I can talk to them as much as I can and try to be as persuasive as I can, but they have to make that decision.
What are their issues? What do they want? And is there anything we can do?
It really comes down to they file their application first. I mean, it's is that, I mean, it's that
Well, that
basic.
fact in itself does not prevent them from pulling their application. I assume their issue is the same as ours.
No, I mean, again,
Commissioner, Vice Mayor Iwan.
yeah, I don't wanna-
My assessment from the meetings with the staff over there is that the drive is coming from the staff level. And there seems to be a sense of ownership in this project for annexation. They have about 4 applications either at the county or in their process. And the staff response is, we got our application in first. And then when the staff meets with their elected officials, that is what the staff tells them. And just like any other relationship, the elected officials are deferring to their staff on this issue. So our challenge is getting around that stubbornness that's coming out of there and having more of the intelligent conversation. And the couple that we have heard back from that are willing to pull their application are long timers, and they say they understand our needs.
Well, will you and Maria please go over there and threaten them or straighten them out or something?
All right, any other questions? Yep.
I did give a look at one point during the meeting.
If we get to a point where there's an impasse and everything stops, once the impasse is rectified, does it start right back up again, or do we have, let's say if we happen to be on the prevailing side, or is there other things that have to get started again?
No, the application just goes forward. I mean, it just starts up. I mean, we don't start again unless we file a new application. There's really no reason to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Jeff, thank you again.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right, any additions, deletions, or withdrawals? Staff,
Nothing from staff.
from the commission?
Yeah, I'd like to, when the manager gives her updates of things, to include an update on the restrooms.
On the restrooms, okay.
Yes.
I have just a brief report on the MLK Day of Service, which I can do with my comments at the end
Sure,
of the meeting.
perfect. Okay, and I'd like to move item 10A, the resolution on the Pine Rockland development, to right before item 9A. All right, so we will take public comment. Anyone wishing to make any comments, please come up, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Marie Smith. I live at 12015 Griffin Boulevard. I am a member of the Ecology Board and the Foundation. Commissioner Watts came to our last ecology meeting and requested that we get behind this resolution, which is number 10, on the Pine Rockland matter, and to appeal to the commission to have it passed tonight. Coincidentally, this morning on my lawn, the Biscayne Times came out with a wonderful article on this particular project. And I do believe that if everybody studies it, that it'll be definitely resolved and passed tonight. What is happening in Miami in the last 50 years, it is becoming a concrete jungle. We have seen Brickell Avenue, concrete take over Miami. Aventura, FIU will be dispensing onto our roads with thousands of people. Our transportation is in catastrophic condition. So we as a village who pertains to call ourselves the tree city, the bird sanctuary, we are very small. But we need to stand behind municipalities that want to keep the green. So I would say tonight that this resolution to coordinate with other municipalities to keep Pine Rockland going, it be passed. And that is my wish for the commission tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie. All right, anyone else?
Hi, Dan Keys. Sent you all the file today, very late, unfortunately, and I'm sure you haven't had a chance to read it, but it pertains to the swale ordinance and the work that's being done on that. The last meeting, some proposals were made, and the majority of the boards passed that proposal, which was to basically reduce 3 zones on the right-of-way to 2. Long story short, if you don't provide some suggestions to the board, one way or the other, as to whether or not you like the current form of the proposal, then and that's what the board is going to be working on at the next joint board meeting. I might suggest that there is an opportunity for you all to defer some pain when the actual document gets to you later on as a commission by considering whether or not you'd want to have the opportunity to come before the joint boards to express your opinion at that point. Because if the board sees a certain desire expressed from individual members, then it can try to produce a document that's closer to what the entire board would go with. That's my only comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
Barbara Kuhl, 111th Street. I agree with Marie Smith. Usually we're not on the same page, but this time we are. And I think I've heard a lot of comments every time this resolution tries to be addressed, that this isn't an issue that belongs in our village, that we should be dealing with village matters. And this is unincorporated Dade County. We're all residents of Dade County, and this affects all of us. This is part of our land. So it's very appropriate that the village, I hope, gets behind this and supports it. As far as the loan for the construction, the new village hall and the log cabin, I was looking at where the money was coming from, where the suggestions were, and for me, yes, we can afford this. There's always going to be money in our budget, but it depends where we take it. And I think that if we're doing this, we should be cutting money in our budget, not moving money around. One place that we started this year with $40,000, $41,000 I think, in the landscaping of the medians, which I said at the budget hearings, I thought that was an astronomical amount for a village that has monetary problems, according to everybody. You put $20,000 into the contingency fund, and now it looks like you're using that. But as far as I'm concerned, there's still money in that line item for the landscaping of the medians, and that can wait. We can't do, I'd love to do a lot of things, but we can't. We have to decide what we need and what we want. And you probably have your decision made. I don't know how much weight you're going to give to the residents, but I don't want that money I don't want the contingency fund and the reserves being reduced just because it's there. The $100,000 really is just a drop in the bucket. We still need that. That should all be in our reserves. We should be bolstering it. The finance director said we didn't even have enough money to cover us for 3 months, which is not a good plan. So if you want to do this, I would cut the budget. And I also said at the budget hearings that I feel recreation has a very large budget and it's growing, and I don't see the need for it. I'd like it justified. I'd like to see hard facts why we do need another full-time person, more programs, more staff, whatever. I feel like nobody is being really going over this critically and deciding if that's what we really need. The other thing I've kept quiet about were the bathrooms. It's 6 months since the bathrooms were finished, and we all agreed it was not a good job. I've heard a lot of things about our public service manager's schedule, which to me has no relevance on the bathrooms. We hired supposedly a professional to do the bathrooms. That's what the professional does. We don't need he should be doing it. If the public service manager is going to be doing it, then that's another story. I'd like to hear reasons why this bathroom is taking longer than the construction I had on my house, which is 20 times the price. I had a new roof, bathroom, bedroom, air conditioning, windows. It was all done in 6 months, and we haven't even come close. So could we please have some hard answers to some hard questions? Thank you.
So Barbara, just to clarify, you're in support of borrowing the current ordinance as it's
Yes,
proposed
I
tonight?
don't have a problem borrowing. I mean, we knew we were going to have to borrow the money. This is already rolling.
Okay.
But I just would like to see it come out of reduced spending.
Okay, thank you.
Janie Anderson, 11th Place, 119th Street. I was out walking around the rec center at about 4-ish today, and it seemed like every inch of the field was occupied by adorable younger kids playing soccer. I mean, and don't get me wrong, there were no attitudes. Everybody's polite, very cool, not a problem. My question has to do with that when you look at the field, it's looking very tired. And there's a lot of patches of white sand and whatever. So while the kids were great, is that a Biscayne Park? Because it was very organized, obviously. Is that a Biscayne Park thing, or is that from an outside city and renting? That would be question one. And question two, there are also several cars parked partially on the sidewalk, which obviously is a problem in terms of potential damage, and it sort of lessens the whole experience when you're trying to walk the sidewalk. So while I don't want to see more signs saying don't park on the sidewalk, people don't read the signs anyway. That's evidenced by that they walk the dogs in the park. If maybe staff could keep an eye on that and get people to move so we don't end up with additional costs incurred. And my one last comment as far as the loan, I'm not going to get specific in my ideas, but I would ask this commission to remember, at the end of the day, you guys are responsible for our money, and you're responsible for our future, and I ask that you not gamble, that you watch where you fund the loan from.
Janie, let me ask you, are you in support of borrowing the three?
Yes, just not from where it's coming.
Okay, you're in support of it, okay. Can staff, Madam Manager, can you just briefly address in 30 seconds the status of the bathroom? And then also, I recall that you were putting the field sort of on a...
Yes,
Okay, can you address those two issues real quick?
sure. Do you want to let public comment?
No, you can
Okay,
address them.
the bathroom is moving along. Just like anyone who's restored an old house, sometimes you don't know what you're getting into, and it appears that in the past, instead of addressing issues, they were covered up, and that includes a major leak of water. There was water intrusion coming in from the outside planter, which has caused mold inside the bathroom. That was discovered the deeper we went into it. So we had to mitigate the mold. And then while we were doing that, there were also termites that were found. So we used the end of December to tent the building and address the termites. And we wanted to make sure that the planter was completely sealed before we started putting sheetrock up. Sheetrock has gone up this week, and they're proceeding with the project. It's frustrating for everybody involved. It's not based on anyone's schedule, other than we want to make sure that there's good oversight on it. As opposed to last time, it's unfortunate, but last time decisions were made in the field, and I've been very honest about this. It's unfortunate, but decisions were made in the field, and I was not made aware of them or consulted about them along the way. They were told to proceed, and that's unfortunate. So this time, every step of the way, the public services manager's looking over it. If it's something I need to be involved in, at the very least, I'm being informed. He's making most of the decisions, but we're making them together, and we're being very deliberate in making sure it's getting done.
And can you, I don't know how often the contractor's here, but can you sort of light a fire to if he's not here every day, to light a fire to have him expedite this?
those conversations have been had.
Those conversations have been had, and we are getting to the point now where we can start moving forward more quickly. The manager mentioned the termites, the water damage. Another thing we've just encountered was, as the tile came up from the floor because of the water intrusion, the subfloor came up with it. So these are things that have slowed us down, and I mean, they're real things. It's not a matter of my schedule on that. But now we're at that point where we are putting up sheetrocks, and it should start moving more quickly.
Okay, Christian, thank you.
Sure.
All right.
And regarding
Real
Mrs.
quick.
Anderson's comments about the field, as the commission knows, I sent out an email to the commission last week that we are addressing the field conditions. We are getting ready to put it on a 2-week hiatus. We're trying to coordinate that with the leagues that use it. They're on board with us doing it, but we're just trying to coordinate their schedules. And we're going to put it on a 2-week hiatus and do a really intense loving and healing of the field and address it from there.
Okay.
And again, like anything else in the village, just like with our police matters, I'm going to use this, Chief, as an opportunity. If you see something, say something, call 911 with a police matter. If you're here at the park, you see cars on the sidewalk, or you see something that's not up to par, our park is almost always staffed, except for the early mornings on the weekends. Come in, talk to a staff member, and that way they can ask those cars to be moved right away, and we can nip the issue in the bud.
Okay. All right, I'm sorry to interrupt public comment, but I think it's important to
Thank
get
you.
those questions answered. George.
Okay, George Marinoni, 1002 Northeast 118th Street. First, about the Rockland, the pines, I'm in support of that. Please pass that resolution. We are in Dade County, and we know the problem about Dade County overdeveloping all of our lands, and this is a very important part of Dade County. And I want to comment on the borrowing of the money. And personally, I'm very conservative with money, and I think this is the right thing to do. Because if we don't do this money is probably very cheap at this point in time, because the interest rates are so low, and probably they will start raising interest rates. If we have to borrow in the future, it will cost more money. And if we could secure the loan now, fixed interest rate especially, will be great. And I read to some people that say maybe we should use the reserve funds instead of borrowing. I think that is ill-advised, because if we need those funds in the future, we will have to borrow, and at whatever we can, I mean, if there is an emergency and we need to borrow in a hurry, we will have to pay a lot more money. Plus, I think since the economy is changing and the prices of the property are going up, we can expect revenue to increase at least 4 or 5% a year for Biscayne Park. So I think should be the right thing to do to borrow this money. That's it.
Okay, thank you, George. Tracy? Nope. Chuck?
Chuck Ross, 11166 Griffin Boulevard. Since George just said everything that I was going to say, I'm not going to repeat. I'm just going to say I agree with everything that George just said. It's cheap money, and we want to borrow the right amount of money that we need to get the project done properly and complete it. So I'm not going to reiterate everything he just said. I agree with him 100%. 4.25% is a good rate. Anyway, I'm going to talk about Crime Watch for a minute. So we had a Crime Watch meeting on I believe it was the 18th. And we're going to have another one on February 19th, which is a Thursday. We had Bryant Acevedo, who gave a presentation on identity theft. And the chief was there with, I believe, 6 of his officers. And I would like, we didn't have that great a turnout this time, and I'm a little disappointed, so I'm going to ask everybody to try to help me get more people to come and attend these meetings. I think they're important, and I appreciate the effort that the chief puts into it. And actually, Captain Harrison and Tommy Harrison and I talked about going door to door and trying to recruit some more people to get to the meetings. And You know, I think I'm about 670 on my crime watch list now, which is a pretty good number. Thank you.
And Chuck, maybe they produce some helpful materials on
Oh, I have it.
identity.
I
Yeah.
brought it, actually.
So anyway,
This, I believe we can get a copy. This is Take Charge Fighting Back Against Identity Theft. This is a handout that was given by Bryant. By the way, Bryant's from the State Attorney's Office, I should have said. And I thought he did a really good job of the presentation. So if anybody's interested in this, I think we can get some more copies. I believe he said they were available, right?
Yep.
Want an update on the ball player?
On the what?
Ball player?
Sure.
Okay. We are at with the money for all together after Fred and I contribute our money. Right now we're at approximately $5,700 now. Last time I spoke to you, I didn't include Fred and my money in it. We were about 2,000. So we've raised in a month or a month and a half. I think it's a month and a half, 2 months when we started. I forgot. Yeah, we've raised at least $3,000, I would say, roughly. And oh, thank you. So the goal was $6,000 to answer the unspoken question. The goal was 6, so we're there basically. I got a couple of people who made pledges, and I think that's going to get us there. If not, we'll hit the street and collect a little more money. And thank you to everyone who contributed to the ball player.
Thank you, Chuck.
Greetings. Good job, guys. Milton Hunter, 646 Northeast 114. I've got a big voice anyway, I don't need this. I have an abbreviated comment for tonight, and I just wanted to read an excerpt from an evaluation that was done on our village hall back in 2012. I think Gary Kuehl and our past village manager, Anna Garcia, was involved in this. And I quote, "The historic log cabin built in 1933 does not sufficiently meet the needs of staff to provide residents with quality municipal services. Building's deficiencies include non-ADA compliance, safety issues such as shared space between staff and prisoners, and fire hazards due to improper storage of documents. Additionally, employee health hazards are present such as rodent infestation, roof leaking, and mold." Now, I don't know about you, but does this sound like a work environment any of us would want to be in? Probably not. The need for this building actually dates back to 1999. I know something has been sprung on us out of the blue, but this goes all the way back to basically the year I moved into the village, where a plan was developed to create a new village hall on the 114th Street lot across from the log cabin. Again, in 2004, with a commitment of funds from the North Miami Medical Center, a Village Hall Combo Computer Learning Center was designed to be constructed, of which we've used some of those plans now for the new building. But neither of these projects were implemented. The reason why, poor planning, lack of the commission to make a decision in a timely manner, and the fact that they were trying in 1999 to build what was then an unbuildable lot. So clearly that wasn't going to fly. In my wildest dreams, I would have never imagined anyone would complain about the village acquiring the grant that no one ever thought would happen for $1 million. So it's nice to look at this as a positive and not try to turn it into a negative, because we're running a little short of our goal to get everything done at one time. So I would say we move forward while we are on the clock and continue our plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel. Tracy.
Good evening. Tracy Trutman, 791 Northeast 116th Street. First of all, I want to thank all the staff and the city manager, every single commissioner who has let me talk their ear off regarding several issues. Lately, I think I've spent, I don't know how much time on the phone with them, and they've been very cordial and very kind to listen to me, so I thank them. I'm just a resident, but I thank them for listening. I'll start with the acreage down in South Dade. I'm 100% in support of anything that will preserve the pine rocklands down in Miami-Dade. We have lost a tremendous amount of corridors ecologically. These corridors are very important to wildlife passing over and passing through, as well as there's a lot of endangered species in those areas. We've developed everything we possibly can in Miami-Dade County. We need to stop and just take a look at a few last parts that we have left. And if anybody's never been down there, I encourage you to take your family down there and have a really nice day. It's beautiful out there. Secondly, regarding the park, I wasn't going to talk about that, but I appreciate Barbara bringing it up. I do think we've had a lot of issues with non-residents using the park, much more so than our residents. I think we need to balance the needs of our residents with outside community members, and also look at charging for the park, since I'm trying to make it more revenue neutral. And that's been an issue longstanding, and I really wish you would all would address that very quickly, so we can have a reason to have a wonderful field, or whatever else we're going to do, and also make it for not just for younger people, but for everybody in the community. Regarding the $350,000, I go back and forth. I must tell you, I've gone back and forth more times than I care to, but I do have deep concerns with both making sure that we're going to have the reserves and at the same time recognize the need for a building. I do think I'm going to leave this up to everybody sitting on the dais and the city to really figure out financially with the financial manager what is best for the village financially. I will say that I'm concerned about the reserves. At the same time, also concerned about taking out a loan when we have been having revenue issues. At the same time, I don't have a solution for you, so my staying up here is kind of pointless. I do want to make one comment about information that's gone around the village. I can't help it because I can't stand seeing emails that are completely and absolutely erroneous, misleading, and attempting to ignite fuel where there shouldn't be any. The information that was sent recently in Mr. Bernard's email is really totally inconsistent with the facts that I've found them. So I'm going to once again encourage all the residents, if you have any questions, I must tell you once again, the staff as well as the commissioners have been very kind with their time in educating me. So I recommend that you get it from the source. Thank you very much.
Tracy, thank you. Any other public comment?
Mayor?
Yes.
In regards to Mrs. Trutman's recent comment about the use of the fields and making it revenue neutral, I was reviewing the budget today, and the budget director's bringing it up on his screen, but I want to say at this point in the year, we have about 55% of our projected revenue for the park just in facility rentals, whereas we're at 25% of the year. So we are making sure that we are making money off of the field. That was a commitment that we made to you through the budget process, and we are not lacking in that area. The trick is finding the balance between the wear and tear on the field and the revenue that we're bringing in, and that's what we're addressing right now.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment period. And we will move on to the, Erwin, we're going to do the financial updates.
Good evening. We're looking at the financial results as of December 31st, 2014, which ends the first quarter. You all have the financial in front of you. If you could see in the yellow that we are 25% into the year as of the end of December. And if you look at the blue column right next to it, you'll see that expenditure-wise, we're spending at this point 22%, so we're well within where we should be at this time in the year. There's no departments that are really over budget as of the end of December in our general fund. Everyone's right in line where they should be at this time in the year. If you look at the revenues from the chart you see up above, that on our projected ad valorem revenues of $1.3 million as of the end of December, we've collected $1.1 million, or 82% of our ad valorem year to date. We'll get a small more in January, and the rest will come with the tax sales, certificate sales in June. So we're right on target as far as the revenues go. If you turn to the next page, you'll see that the cash balance we have, because of the ad valorem, we've got close to $1 million in the month of December. Can we go to the next page? Okay, we have approximately $1.5 million sitting in our general operating account right now. Now, at the last meeting, there was discussion, why don't we set up a money market account or a reserve account or a money market account where we could put the money in and sweep it out to the operating as we need it. I have the bank here tonight. I'm already in discussions with him, and we're supposed to meet next week to see what we can do to set something up in that nature so that the money, when the money comes in, we put it into the money market account and we'll just sweep it out as we need it on a monthly basis. It's not going to earn much interest, but at least we'll earn some.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Any questions on where we are at this point in time?
Anything? No? Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Erwin. And just to go back to my point, you see it on here, for services, of course, includes a lot of different things, but even in that, under revenues, we're at 54% for this year. It's on the
That's
top
actually,
chart.
considering that if I may, through the mayor, considering that a big chunk of that service revenue comes from the summer camp, we're way ahead of the game, I think.
Correct, correct.
Yeah.
We committed to finding revenue sources within, and we're trying to do that.
Alrighty, let's move on to consent. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Vice Mayor Jonas, second by Commissioner Anderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. All right, item 10A. I'm sorry, yes, item 10A. We're going to move that up. Resolution 2015-02.
May I read that title, if you're going to discuss it? A resolution of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, opposing the proposed development of approximately 88 acres of pine rockland generally located along Southwest 152nd Street and Southwest 127th Avenue with unincorporated Miami-Dade County, providing for an effective date.
Okay, thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Commissioner Watts, I know you have a representative that would like to speak. Do you want to?
Just to give a little preface.
Sure.
I actually don't need to say all of that much because Leslie Jacobs will do that for me. And also because Barbara Kuehl, Marie Smith, and Tracy Trutman have eloquently, I think, made the point. This is our environment, this is our backyard, this is our space, and we have to be stewards of the endangered butterflies and the flora and fauna in this area. And Miami-Dade is already overpopulated and so concreted. But Leslie is active in the coalition to save the two different projects for the pine rocklands, and I'd like her to speak on the issue.
Okay.
Thank you.
Leslie, welcome.
Thank you, David. I'd like to thank Heidi, Barbara Watts, and David Coviello for inviting us here. And basically, I know all of us, we share this land, we're in the same boat together. So I just want to say how happy I am to hear so many people from the village supporting the documents that were sent from Cindy Lerner to your municipality, because really, even though we had 1,000 people turn out January 17th for the rally to save the Pine Rocklands, really our fight, it's not a fight, but our voices need to be heard and supported on this issue, because on March 3rd, the commissioner meeting presenting the opposing side who wants to build this Richmond Coral Reef project and develop this 88 acres of land that sits at Zoo Miami, is going to try and declare the land a blighted slum. And really, there are collectively, just for some of you, I don't know, some of you may know this, I want to keep the information pertinent so that you're as informed as possible. But while I'm speaking, I'd like to pass around a sign-up sheet. This is for our petition. And thank you. And basically, by signing our petition, you will get the most informed information on our efforts to save the endangered pine rocklands of South Florida. And it also helps strengthen our support in case we need to escalate it to a federal level. We're hoping it doesn't get to that, but at least by having your signature, you will see from our petition, first of all, the latest updates, the map of the land in question, which is outlined in the petition I started. And I started this, like all of you, I'm a busy person. I run a children's charity that educates children on taking care of the earth, that's sponsored by the United Nations Charity Children International. I'm a healer. So, you know, you may ask me, why would I take this on? I really have a full plate like all of you. And the reason being is I love South Florida. And how many of you love South Florida here? Everyone, because I heard it when you came up and spoke on behalf of the village. We all love South Florida. My great-grandparents lived on this land. I've been coming here since a child. I went to University of Miami. And I, frankly, from living and being a gypsy and living so many places, coming home and moving back to South Florida 2 years ago, I was so sad when I woke up in July and read the Miami Herald's article, you know, what the Miami-Dade Commission was doing, and my alma mater, University of Miami, underhandedly selling this land for $22 million. And you have to understand, I know, David, you're an attorney who specializes in zoning. You have to understand the history of years of neglect of this land, which was a gift from the U.S. government for the university to use for educational purposes. So the U.S. Fish and Wildlife offers controlled burns, which Pine Rockland, if any of you know anything about Pine Rockland, it's a very peculiar, particular type of ecosystem. It needs a lot of love and care. And frankly, I don't know anyone that would want to live next to a piece of land that requires controlled burns. And it's already, you know, way too congested. So in addition, I want to just share with you the support right now. We have 10,000 signatures on the petition we're passing around. Collectively, we're at about 90,000 signatures. We have over 10 environmental organizations on board helping us. They include Tropical Audubon Society, Sierra Club, Regional Conservation.org, South Florida Wildlands, and I know I'm forgetting many more, but at least 10. We also have our own Al Sunshine, who some of you may know on TV as the investigative Shame on You reporter. And Al is great. He's, you know, uncovered so many, you know, he does what he does best, you know, zoning mishaps, because in the history of this land, they've tried for many, many, many times to get, you know, zoning to, and purposely neglected the land so that, you know, to secretly, underhandedly try to sell it. So, you know, it is my alma mater. I love it. The idea here is not to shame any people, but it's just to present the facts. And I do want to say that we had our first town hall meeting with the municipalities that live close to the land. And when we had that meeting, Peter Cummings, the president of Ram Realty, who bought the land for $22 million, claimed that he had no idea about Pine Rockland and how rare it was, and that and the controlled burns and all the 200 endangered species that live on that land. So we asked him point blank. We said, Mr. Cummings, if we could get your money back, if you went and paid your money back, would you not develop? And I just want to say that yes, that in response to our rally, he tried to say that he's saving the environment, and any leading biologist who works in conservation will tell you you cannot preserve part of an ecosystem. It's like plain Russian roulette to try and move some of these endangered species.
Hey,
So,
I'm sorry to interrupt
yeah.
you. Could you wrap it up? 'Cause we
Sure.
got- okay.
Sorry. Thank you so
No,
much.
Thank you for coming.
So basically what we need to do moving forward is just raise awareness that I just want to say Pine Rocklands are very rare to this land. There's only 2% in the world. And one thing that hasn't come out in the press that I also wanted to share today is our beloved Florida panther. There are only 100 left, and maybe not this particular Pine Rockland, but they call Pine Rockland home in addition to the 200 endangered species. So we so thank you for your support today, and we look forward to helping because, you know, as a former employee at the United Nations UNHCR in LA, a lot of the issues facing us with global warming were in my face every day, and deforestation is directly linked to climate change, and we need this part of the world to jump on board and be aware and not think in short terms, but in long terms, that if we don't protect the land for future generations and for our children, we won't be here. They're projecting 36 million people will be living in South Florida. And we get our medicine from nature. So, and we need to protect the species that live there. So thank you so much for your time today. And please continue signing and write the commissioner, and please help with the coalition's directives. I'm Also, I wanted to say by signing the petition, we'll also send you the links to our 2 coalition pages on Facebook. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leslie, very much.
Motion in favor?
Vice Mayor Jonas, motion to approve. Second by Commissioner Harrison. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Sure.
Just, people have spoken about the fact that certain issues come up before the commission that aren't directly related to Biscayne Park. And I think this is one of these instances where it's a little engine that could, and if municipalities gather together about areas of mutual concern, and the environment should be one, I think that it sends a voice to the Miami-Dade County Commission, because our own commissioner will be voting on this very issue. So I think it behooves us to
We
support
already
it.
passed it.
Okay. I agree. I mean, there are instances like, for example, the marriage equality resolution
Yeah.
we passed. There are special instances. Commissioner Ross, do you have anything?
I would want to move on to our village business, so
Did you vote yes?
let's just move on.
Okay. Did you vote yes? Okay. Motion carries 5-0. Leslie, thank you.
Also, too, I think it's important for us to go ahead and support our own boards. And we had a board that is pushing
The
us
ecology
to
board.
go ahead, the ecology
Okay.
board, and I think we need to support
All
the
right.
board.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to item 9A, ordinance 2015-01. This is first reading.
This is an ordinance of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, authorizing the borrowing of money in an amount not to exceed $350,000 for the purpose of financing a portion of the village's cost for the total amount to fund the balance of restoration of the historic village hall log cabin. Provide for conflicts, provide for severability, provide for an effective date, and we open it to the public as well.
Okay, so this is a public hearing. If anyone would like to come up and speak on this matter, please come up and state your name and address for the record.
I would speak in favor. Obviously, you've looked at the various options, taking from the reserves, borrowing the money. We've had a couple intelligent people that know about finances here tell us that 4.2% or 4.25% interest rate is a reasonable rate that is available in the market today, even though apparently we only had one bidder. We need the money. We're doing something that's going to help us spend $1 million of somebody else's money, and on things that we have needed in this community for a long time. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan.
Chuck Ross, I'll be brief. I'm speaking in favor. I also want to point out that what was going to cost us $500,000 just to rehab the log cabin is now going to cost us possibly $350,000, and we get an annex building. So, money is being, I believe, well spent. This is a building that is going to last a long time, and it's something we've been looking to do for I don't know how many years. So let's move forward and approve the financing. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chuck. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing.
Motion in favor?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Vice Mayor Jonas, second by Commissioner Ross. With discussion?
Yes.
Okay. Actually, okay, go ahead.
Mayor, would you like me to present?
Yes, please, I'm sorry.
I'll do a summary real
Okay.
quick. As the commission knows from the backup, it's important to understand that the village charter says that the commission cannot borrow funds unless it's approved by 4 commissioners, provided that the commission has first received and approved a feasibility study from the manager concluding that sufficient revenues are available to repay the indebtedness, and the funds are borrowed for a valid public purpose. We've provided a lengthy memo and backup that shows the justification for this loan as well as the ability to repay it. Just to recap on some history on how we got here, on Saturday, August 16th, if you recall, the commission held a workshop with the public where there was a lot of public participation throughout the workshop. The scope of the project was decided after input from the community, and discussion took place at that time regarding the possible need to finance if we were to go forward with the whole scope of project that we have today. On October 7th, in a memo to the commission that was on the agenda regarding the bidding of the annex project, my memo spoke about the need of possible financing, And on December 9th, we had a special meeting where we also discussed the need for financing. It was after that that we went out to bid and sought bids from financial institutions. Our understanding is with, especially with what's going on out there, especially in the Tri-County area, but really in Broward, Miami-Dade right now, is that there's so many big projects that this is such a small project as far as from the financing world compared to some of the bigger projects out there. So a lot of banks did not think it was worth their time based on the size of the project. City National Bank, who we have a long-standing relationship with, did see fit to bid on it, and they have known about our intentions for a while now and seen the progress of the village, so they were, of course, interested in bidding. For the first time since 2007, we will be putting money into reserves. We will not know the exact amount until after the audit is completed, but it's estimated by our finance director to be at $100,000. That's a large increase to our existing reserves of $407,000. During public comment, I heard some concerns about the line item that the money will come from. I think it's important to remember that the suggestion for those two line items is for this year only, and it was only used to illustrate how we can find the funds within our budget. The budget is, at the end of the day, a whole item, and regardless if we take from one line item or not, our goal is to stay within our budget at the end of the day. For example, last year, the same budget that we're expecting to return about $100,000 to revenue, I've been very honest and open that we came in over budget in our police department. But many of our other departments came in under budget. Many of our line items, both in the police department and other departments, came in under budget. And as a result, the entire budget came in under budget. So while one line item might run over, or we might use one line item to pay for a certain thing, ultimately our goal is to balance the budget or save money in our budget at the end of the year. So we use those two line items as an example instead of saying that we were going to cut costs on a certain program when we're not sure we could really do that. So we had these two items, $20,000, which came from the landscaping budget already, and a commitment of $16,000 to put into the reserves. So with that being said, if there are any questions regarding moving forward with the loan, I have Mariano Martinez from City National Bank here, and he's available to answer any questions, as well as the finance director, our village attorney, and myself. Thank you.
Okay, Heidi, thank you, and congratulations on working through this budget this year, and with the 100,000 savings, that's significant. As you pointed out, it's the first time in 5 years, so thank you for that. One quick question, the RFP was only issued for a week, is that, can you explain why?
It was for 10 days, and I believe that when we, over the last couple months, we had been talking to different financial institutions and trying to understand what the market was, what kind of interest rates we could expect before we released the RFP. And we were advised more than once to keep it short. And that had to do with not only the way the banking world works, but because of the market and the interest rates. You know, if it was open longer, there would be fluctuation between someone who did their paperwork 2 weeks ago and someone who did their paperwork the day the bid was due. So we were advised by those industry experts to keep it a short opening.
Okay, all right, thank you. What I'd like to do is go down the line and do sort of a straw vote to see if we're all in agreement with the ordinance as it's currently proposed, or if we need to go in a different direction.
I'm not in agreement with the way it's proposed.
Okay, but the ordinance simply authorizes us to borrow an amount not to exceed $350,000. It doesn't speak to where it's coming from.
Correct.
So you're not in agreement with that?
There's a question I have.
Okay, go ahead.
What is the reason you set that amount of money to borrow versus to have a line of credit up to that?
We just decided to go with the traditional financing. Can you address line of credits? And I don't know if line of credits are available to municipalities. I might defer if you want to go to the podium. Yeah, Yeah, the finance director is also saying over here, well, we know what we need to borrow, so we know what the project costs are. Provided in your backup is a breakdown of those fees, but I don't know about line of credits from the banking side.
And typically, Mariano Martinez with City National Bank. Thank you for having me here this evening. I mean, this was in response to the RFP, but I guess to respond to your question, I mean, of course, there's lines of credit that could be available, but typically those can be variable. And then just depending on the scope of the project, you know, we would need timelines, and then we would have to see if it then would turn into something like would be a construction loan, where there would be a draw up to a certain amount, and then we would term it out to something else. But in the rate environment we're in, I mean, and the scope of your project, you know, I would think that pulling out, if you know that that's the money you need allocated for it, and locking in a rate for, you know, for 15 years, and not, I guess having that time where you could possibly have fluctuations in rates, you know, 1 or 2 years down the road, you know, is something I guess to consider.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The reason why I was asking about a line of credit, because I really feel this amount of money, we could be cutting back on some of the items that we're doing on the log cabin and phase it in over a few years. Instead of having us, by this loan, locked in for 5 years when we can't do any prepayments for an interest rate of this amount of money, where we could go ahead and eliminate something at the beginning on the log cabin and defer that down the road and start doing other things on the log cabin, where we could say in 5 years everything would be done and we didn't have to borrow this kind of money.
So you're not in favor of borrowing up to $350,000?
Correct.
Okay, we need 4 votes, so you're not in favor.
I'm good.
You're good.
I actually was going to ask if 350,000 was enough, or are we putting ourselves in a position where we're going to be tight at the end? And I spoke to the manager about it. She gave me the reasoning why they came up with that number from both sides of the calculation, and so I'm good with the 350.
Okay.
Some of the other comments I had with the manager was if there was a potential savings on the interest accrual if we rather than took out the entire amount, drew down sort of a third at a time as we needed it. But I understand also the complexities of fluctuating rates when you have a line of credit or when you structure the loan in a different way. It impacts on the interest rate. Okay. I think it's a great, really good advantage to have, be able to pay it down after 5 years, because a lot of banks don't give you that opportunity, and I'm hoping that we would be able to do that as things brighten up for the village in the future. Some of these other negotiating points, you know, I would leave up to the manager as we go through to the next step in the process, and I'm hoping that we do get there. This commission has been looking at financing for Village Hall as far back as at least 2012, when we did meet with some bankers and we're trying to figure out how to raise capital, whether it would be through financing a vehicle or some other way in order to address the issues at Village Hall. And it was Commissioner Anderson who at that point said that we really were in such a state that we couldn't keep letting things go by the wayside. It was time to address it in 2012, and here we are in 2015. It's double time to address it. Just a couple of months ago, when we started out on approval for the process, we said up for discussion was whether we were going to have Village Hall include the police department, and if the police department could be spun off to another facility, perhaps we could lessen the scope of the annex building. But the majority of the commission wanted to keep police at the Village Hall structure, so that sort of raised the amount that we would need that we were needing for the annex building. And we also said, I think at that time, or maybe at a subsequent meeting, that we need to address the whole thing now. And a lot of people have come up, several people came up today and said, yes, address the whole thing, borrow the money that you need. So I'm totally in favor of getting this done. It's been a long time coming. I don't want to jeopardize this gift of $1 million, and I want to be able to get the whole project done, because there will be economies in doing it all at once rather than piecemealing it out. It will be more expensive in the end to piecemeal it out. I think that's all I have for my comments.
Okay, Commissioner Watts, are you in favor of the ordinance as?
I have some problems with it and some questions that I'd like to address to the
Okay.
the village. And then just one other thing, sir, I just have a question, and forgive my naivete. I've tried to educate myself on this, on municipal loans and all, but it's a big field. Why is it that the interest rate of 4.25 is so much higher than, than the average home mortgage interest rate, which varies from about 3.75 now to?
Typically, just in general, always commercial rates and residential home rates are just different. Terms for homes are over 30 years. Those rates typically are lower. So I mean, if you pretty much just in general check with any bank over commercial rates and the type of loan that you're getting and the terms, I mean, that's very in line, and we reviewed it and we offered something very good for a 15-year loan for what you're doing.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I have a couple of questions.
Absolutely.
And I'm sorry I got tied up with my nerves, so I couldn't talk with you this afternoon. How many banks did you approach? I mean, I'm troubled by just having one bank responding to an RFP.
We reached out to 4.
I saw that,
But it's unknown to us how many actually looked at the RFP for 2 reasons. Well, for one reason, we advertised in the Daily Business Review, and then you didn't have to come in to pick up plans like with a construction bid or anything like that. You went on our website and looked at the RFP, and then decided if you were going to bid. So we do not know how many people saw it in the Daily Business Review and might have gone to look at it. But we reached out to 4 that had expressed interest.
Did you email or what? Contact us? I'm just curious.
No, actually, we actually had one bank come in. FCB actually came in and met with us more than once, and I spoke to them many times on the phone.
Prior to us going out
And
to
for
bid.
some reason, they decided not to bid. I also had a talk with Merrill Lynch and with Bank of America, and they said it was well below their threshold to finance. If it wasn't at least $3 million, they weren't interested.
Okay, because I was thinking that there are certain banks that do specialize in municipal loans. And I was wondering if you approached some of those outside of Florida.
It's the threshold issue.
Also, when I checked and went online and took a look what the commercial rates were, they were all between 4.25% and 5%. So 4.25% is a good rate.
Then I was just curious as to this 2.5 cents tax as our collateral, using that as the half-cent tax.
You're required to provide a non-ad valorem revenue source as collateral.
But didn't we count on that money already in the budget that we're going to spend?
Yes.
So then we'd have to take it out of each line where that's.
But it doesn't go to each line. It's just in the revenue section, but it's also increasing. So our projection is that by the end of the year, the collateral will actually be part of that increase.
Remember also that we had the $20,000 for reserves and the other amount going back into contingency for those 2 line items. That's what we're anticipating using. So we would not be increasing the expenditures in the general fund.
Yeah, although I believe, if memory serves me, that during our the budget workshops, that $20,000 that we put in contingency was ideally going to ultimately go to the reserves. It was just, is it in case we need it for something, some emergency comes up. So that would be money that we're taking out of it, essentially diverting from what was sort of intended ultimately to go to the reserves.
The other thing the manager brought up is that for the half-cent sales tax, initially we had budgeted around $17,000 a month, and it's really coming in right now so far about $18,500 to almost $19,000. So I anticipate if it keeps going at the current rate, that we'll have about a $10,000 surplus over what we had budgeted on that specific line item alone.
Because I'm just surprised when the budget was supposedly cut so thin, and there's nothing to, no excess, no extra calories, that all of a sudden we can find all of this money in the budget. It seems, I don't know, I just don't quite understand it. And here's just one other thing I think, and why I have a problem with this, is I think that we could find some things in the budget to cut, like not, and I think you did this, but I didn't see it in the backup here, that maybe we're going to return to the recreation center person being part-time rather than full-time, and that would money that could go into this. I was just thinking that we could find ways to shave projects so that we wouldn't have to take out this much money as a loan.
I cannot commit to finding $350,000 in our budget right now. Regarding the recreation position, right now I am filling it at part-time, but I cannot commit those funds because we might need a new air conditioning unit in here. We need to cover the termite tenting, and there's other costs that I cannot commit at this time, that salary portion.
Okay. But then there could be money from the landscape fund, as Barbara Kuehl mentioned. And I was just thinking, if we go through the village hall, like certain things that are the projected costs, like how much money for furnishings, like $29,000 and $50,000 for
That covers
IT.
also IT and
Well,
wiring.
there's a separate one for IT.
Or, I'm sorry, that covers some of the furnishings. There will be new furnishings, and that's just in case, but we're working on getting a donation from a very nice office firm.
Yeah, because I was thinking like the furniture, just as I did a couple of years ago, we got all of the chairs for the, FIU, we can get a surplus, FIU, very nice furniture. So I think there are ways in this that we could cut corners. and save
Commissioner
some money.
Watts, what's on the table now is whether to borrow the money. It's not, we're not necessarily deciding tonight where that money's gonna come back, where the debt service is coming from.
But Commissioner Watts,
What we do know is we have the ability to service the debt. Okay, but we can always adjust that if we wanted to pull it from somewhere else in the budget.
correct. I just want to reiterate that regardless of the line item that we pull from, it's ultimately that we don't want to go over budget. So regardless of that specific line item, we don't want to go over budget for the entire budget.
I'm not sure I understand that.
Using the example of last year, the police department came in over budget. But I'm sitting here telling you that overall, the village came in under budget by 100,000. So while the police department was over budget, there were routine savings throughout the entire budget. So the same logic applies. Regardless of which line item we pull from, you might say we pull from the XYZ, and Commissioner Ross might say ABC, but at the end of the day, as long as the budget comes in under or at budget, we've done our jobs.
Yeah, but so since if you're anticipating coming in so many thousands of dollars under budget, why are we asking to borrow up to $350,000? Why couldn't we borrow less?
Because $350,000 is what we need to cover the project cost.
I really think that we should have had more of this discussion when we were doing the budget, in the budget hearings, but I'm just uncomfortable with this.
Okay, so you're not in favor, you need 4 votes?
And I have a comment.
I explained when we did the contract for the annex building, that I wouldn't support borrowing money unless we had a budget cut. And what was given to us tonight is not a budget cut. It is saying we're taking money that's earmarked for reserves. I know our manager is new here. We had a hurricane come through here. Luckily, we had over $1 million in reserves. It almost wiped it out completely.
Okay.
Then we had another one come through here, and it was $500,000.
Okay.
We
Mayor,
have
can I
to
address-
earmark money for reserves.
Okay,
Mayor,
you've cited that a number of times. Can you please clarify?
Yes, because this has come up many times, and I went over this with the mayor today, as well as a resident who happened to come in on the same issue. So I've heard this multiple times, so I went back and pulled some files with the clerk, and we did a lot of research. And we found that there was this document saying that we had an obligation of $1.6 million for Hurricane FEMA cleanup. And then what we also found is between the months of February 2006 and July 2006,
we were reimbursed by FEMA over $1 million. And it was this ongoing conversation with FEMA. And then what I found is a July 10th, 2012, resolution number 2012-33, which authorized a payment plan from the village back to FEMA based on some work that had been done by the village staff and O'Brien Response Management. And the total amount for that, according to this memo by Manager Garcia, was for $62,635.84, which would be repaid in 6 payments. That was the outstanding debt that we owed FEMA through the reimbursement process. While the village was going through this after Wilma, I was working at another entity and doing the same thing with FEMA. And I can tell you my experience from Wilma. We went out there and spent a lot of money, like every city did, just to get it cleaned up. FEMA had never gone through this type of exercise before, where they made a large commitment to reimburse, and the municipalities, the counties, the federal entities, the Indian tribes, and everyone else took them up on that offer. We all turned in receipts, and they started rejecting receipts. And I can tell you, up until when I left the tribe around 2011, I was still going to Orlando to the FEMA office and negotiating receipts with them and reviewing files and receipts with them to get our debt down as well. What has happened since Wilma is that FEMA learned their lesson and the cities have learned their lessons, including Biscayne Park. We have Grubbs on board as we did then, but now Grubbs understands how to submit the reimbursements from FEMA. They know what will be reimbursed. At the tribe level, and I'm not being silly, I'm being serious, at the tribe level, the tribe now knows that the staff staying at the Hard Rock is not going to get reimbursed by FEMA. At the time, we thought it was emergency housing to stay at the Hard Rock Hotel, and we tried to get reimbursed. Now we know the rules, and we're not going to do it. Everyone's also going to use the same forms that were provided for FEMA. So at the end, while we did have to put the money out, we did not end up in the hole. The reserves went down well after the FEMA issue, and it was not related to FEMA. We were reimbursed in a matter of 5 months over $1 million, so we could adequately pay our provider to the best of our ability. And at the end of the day, based on resolution 2012-33, it was $62 that we came up short. And the $62,000, I'm sorry, $62,000 that we came up short. And I think the next go around, there will definitely be some things that are rejected by FEMA, but FEMA learned their lesson, the cities learned their lesson, and the providers all learned their lessons. So I'm glad I had the opportunity to look into this, because this is something that I would go back after the meetings and we would talk about, and we just never made the time to look into it. And a couple weeks ago, we really spent some time looking into it, and I have all this documentation that I'm happy to share with anyone. But this is public record as far as the resolution, and it was approved by the commission. It was approved unanimously under Mayor Jacobs, and that's the history with that FEMA.
Can I piggyback on that?
Let me just say one thing too. With respect to the reserves, you know that you had raised a concern about the amount of the reserves, but currently the reserves are at 400 and how many?
It's over 500.
Well, it's unassigned 407. There's
Okay, so
But that was as of
407.
2013. That was as of 2013.
Yes,
We've had
but
a little
unaudited.
Unaudited. Audited is 407.
Unaudited, unassigned
Okay,
is
audited
407.
407, but even at the
Audited 407, yeah, sorry.
Okay, at audited $407,000 is what percentage of our operating budget?
16.35%.
Okay, and 16%, we passed a resolution, this village commission in 2012, that recommended that we have 15% reserve, and that number is consistent with the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, correct?
Correct.
So we're above the standard, we're above our resolution that we adopted in 2012. So even without the $100,000, we're in good shape with respect to the reserves.
And when the numbers do get audited, even if it comes to the $90,000 when we have the final number, that percentage is going to be higher.
Okay.
Okay, now, if we had a storm come through here, if we had $500,000, if we have a storm come through here to do the damage that a previous storm did, we would only be able to half clean up the city. Because we have to lay out the money at the front end, and we get reimbursed. And FEMA does not reimburse 100%. What percentage does FEMA normally reimburse?
It depends on we haven't had the same storm since 2005.
At the last,
And we've been lucky.
But they've
We've been
adjusted,
lucky.
I can't answer what they reimburse now, but we have an agreement with Grubbs, and we would pay them per that agreement, but
Of
we would
course.
also be reimbursed immediately through FEMA.
It's not
There's also a, which I learned at the the Florida League of Cities annual conference last summer. There's also through our blanket insurance and FMIT, the league learned their lesson with these storms
Everyone
as
did.
well. And so they've instituted a program for disaster recovery, and it sort of supervises or oversees that they liaison between the cities and FEMA and the contract cleanup people in order to, so the city doesn't have to actually write that check completely, and they start the reimbursement process, and it goes
FEMA
to
will
the
reimburse
contractor.
quickly.
Right.
And Grubbs is just for the city portion of the cleanup. Our contract with Waste Pro covers the cleanup of the residential properties. So between those two contracts working simultaneously and the lessons learned with FEMA and the commitment from FEMA to get it right and the commitments from the cities and everyone else to get it right, I really hope none of us ever have to go through that 2005. I didn't enjoy being away from my family every other month, having to go to Orlando to go through these receipts. I mean, I've lived this. I have experience in this, and I know that FEMA made major changes.
But you still need to have the money at the beginning to start the
don't.
process.
No.
You don't. You don't need to have it any longer because of this umbrella coverage that FMIT offers through the Florida League of Cities.
I think the mayor brought up a good point. We currently have enough funds to service that debt. Now, whether it comes out of the half-cent sales tax or whether, as Commissioner Watts says, we're going to decrease some expenses down the road, we can make that decision later. But we know that right now there's enough money to fund the debt either way.
A question I have is on that half-cent sales tax, since that's money that we're going to have to be putting aside to back up for this loan, am I correct?
Yes.
Now, is that for the life of the loan? So as this money keeps coming in, none of that money can be spent on the half-cent sales tax?
It would only be a small portion every month that we take out of the half-cent sales tax to fund it. It's not the whole 18,000. It's only a small portion of that.
2,700.
2,700 a month.
That's for the half-cent sales tax.
No, 2,700 would be the debt servicing
Right,
amount every
but I'm
month.
talking about, we're using the half-cent, the
Right,
revenue.
which is 19,000, 18,000 a month.
We're using that to back up the loan.
To pledge as collateral for the loan, correct?
So now, do you have to wait till the loan is paid off? Or can you be using some of that half-cent sales tax?
Would there be excess?
The excess you can use for whatever you want to.
But so whatever the excess, but it's still building up, sitting there, but you're not really spending that money.
Correct. We're just taking a small portion of it and really just designated for the debt servicing every month.
You're holding it aside is
Right.
what you're doing. And as it keeps building up.
Correct.
Let me ask you a question, because we do need 4 votes to move this forward. What is your alternative solution? This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We have $1.1 million in free money, and the village has to put in its contribution of $350,000. So, without losing that opportunity to spend $1.1 million and build these 2 new buildings, or build the one building and rehab the other, what is the solution?
2 things. One, what I asked for originally, for the reducing what the payments are to be reducing out of our budget, not by taking out of reserves, what was earmarked for reserves. What we have earmarked for reserves goes in the reserves. We need to be a monthly reduction out of our operating budget. Secondary thing, why on the log cabin does everything have to be done at the beginning, up front? Because that log cabin, we don't really know what it's going to cost. I can understand it needs a roof. I can understand removing, in other words, all the exterior, I understand it needs to be done. But the interior, why can't we be funding that yearly? Do a section at a time on the interior. The building will still be operational, just like it is now. And we're not sitting there making interest payments on $350,000, because the way this loan is, once you sign it, a certain date, we get that $350,000, and we're starting to make interest payments on that. We need to be cutting down. I don't feel we need all of that. Plus, we have other expenses that we don't know what's going to be happening.
But we do have an estimate from the architect that did an analysis of the log cabin of what he thinks it's going to cost, and very shortly we'll have an exact amount once we send out the RFP.
You won't know until you start to tear it apart.
But they've started that process, and so we think we will need at least $350,000. But your first point, you said that you're concerned about pulling money from the reserves, correct? So
Yep.
Assuming that we're not deciding that tonight necessarily where the money's coming, where the debt service is coming from, assuming we're just approving the $350,000, and assuming for a moment that we need that $350,000 to complete this project, are you in agreement with that?
I'm looking at this as a whole package.
What does
Not
it-
only just the borrowing, because like I said, I'm concerned about borrowing that much. We're given no options of less than that, a way we could be cutting back on some areas.
But we decided to do the project and do it right. I mean, I think it's more cost effective to do it all at once rather than in phases. We agreed with respect to the new building, we spoke about that.
Right. And I completely concur on the new building, but on repairing something, you're doing it piecemeal anyway.
Can we talk a little bit about the timing of the loan and when we would be closing on the loan? Because by my estimation, we have the pool of funds already coming in from the state. And so we probably wouldn't need to draw on this loan until late summer,
Correct,
August.
correct.
If we close in August, we'll have payments, I mean, the first payment, if it's paid out at 6 months, the way it's proposed, wouldn't be even until the next, would not be in this fiscal year.
Correct. And that's what I was saying, that the monies were to illustrate how it can come out of the budget.
Because we'll have excess from the $1.1 million, when you back out the contract for the new building, we'll have how much money towards the log cabin?
After soft cost, roughly about 125.
To get us started on the log cabin.
But assuming that we're able to start on the log cabin within the next 60 days?
The log cabin would need to be, we would need to expend any funds from the million towards the log cabin by June 30th. They are working like busy bees on the plan to go out to bid, but as you know, as I shared with the commission, we opened up the log cabin. We're looking at different things. They're back to the drawing board every day. So it's going to be really that first drawdown on the log cabin work that money will go towards.
Right. So, I mean, in order to have that drawdown and use up the funds from the $1 million, we will need to contract for the rehabilitation of the log cabin. That contract is going to exceed the balance that we have from the $1 million.
And what we need to do is to take a look at that contract and to see what things we could not do right this year and do some of them next year and start funding ourselves.
Commissioner Watts, what's your solution?
Well, why don't you just go up to Tallahassee and get another $1 million for us?
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
I have a further comment.
Sure.
Heidi, I want to say to you in a different way what Barbara Watts said to you. I want to say to you, thank you very much. You've done an amazing job with this budget. It's practically magic how you've gotten things to work out. And it's very clear that you have managed the departments and the flow of money in such a way that this is going to work. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Having said that, I must say I came in here tonight sort of predisposed about two things. One of them was that I agreed with I guess the accusation that Barbara Kuhl made, which is that some of us make the mistake of not thinking of ourselves as citizens of the county. And I was prepared to vote against the Pine Rockland resolution. But I listened to my neighbors who all stood up, and they were very persuasive. I thought they were right, and I decided that I should vote in favor of this instead. Similarly, I came in tonight expecting that I would ask my colleagues on the commission not to borrow a whole $350,000, but rather to take some of it from the reserve. And again, I listened to my neighbors. They spoke very persuasively, and I was convinced that that was the wrong thing to do. So I am in favor of borrowing the whole amount. Now, we have also listened tonight to stories of the village over a period of time. We've listened to what happens if you get careless and you close your eyes and you don't worry about little leaks that happen, and you find out when you need to redo a bathroom that you now have a big job instead of a little job. We also heard tonight what happens if a year ago you have a small vision and you decide to delay and you don't put in an application for annexation, and you turn a job which is easy and cheap into a job which is difficult and very expensive. We hear what happens when you sit on the log cabin and you don't fix things and you let rot happen. This is a time for us to stop having no vision or small vision. It's a time for us to be ambitious. It's a time for us to go for it. We can make this happen. The right thing to do is to borrow this money and finish this up. We talked a couple of months ago about the possibility of not doing the whole job. We were talking about the annex building at the time. David, you and I thought maybe we should hold back on some part of it, and our three colleagues convinced us that that was the wrong approach. We should go for the whole thing, and I agree with them. That's what we need to do. We need to borrow this money. We will find it. It will happen, and we need to move forward. We need to have some kind of vision, some kind of ambition for this village, and this is not a bad place for us to start.
Also, one other point. Historically, if you start and stop a project and do it in the phases like you're talking about, in the long run, it's going to be much more expensive. If you do it all at once, it's always going to be less money.
Okay. Yeah,
The ordinance, I'm sorry, the ordinance as it reads now, I mean, the operative paragraph of the ordinance just only says that we are hereby authorizing to borrow money in an amount not to exceed $350,000. You know, if between now and a second reading, the manager and the finance director sharpen their pencils and they find a different way of funding, we could at the second reading say we're not going to do the whole 350. We may, you know, scale it back. But if we do nothing, we're delaying what we already decided we were going to accomplish with the village hall and the log cabin. And as we've seen, those delays end up costing more in the end.
We're specialists in doing things small, squandering opportunities, and doing it wrong. And we really need to stop that. We need to change it.
Yeah, no, I obviously could not have said it better than you did, but I agree 100% with what you said. But Commissioner Anderson, I want to, again, we need 4 votes for this to move this forward.
Well,
so, again, the ordinance does not indicate where this money is being paid from. So we have multiple options as to how we can pay it back.
Okay, I'm looking under attachment A.
Here we go.
And it says interest payments due semi-annually beginning on March 20th, 15 through 2/20/30. So by this document, we start making interest payments on March 20th, even though we may not need the money then.
Would we make an interest payment before we actually took possession of the money? You know, actually took the loan out?
Once we close.
Yeah.
But we
So
don't-
if we delay
Sorry,
closing.
we don't see that. Can we catch up with y'all?
Attachment A.
Attachment A of, or attachment A of the response.
Right. This is from the bank.
Attachment A is,
But that's just their response to us. At this point now, we can negotiate with them on everything based on where we stand. We're not going to be able to start doing interest payments in March because we're not going to agree to if we go to a second reading, that would be in March. We probably wouldn't close until April. So that was just their response. That is not holding us to that. Mr. Martinez, if you have anything else to say about that.
Yeah, as she's saying it, that's just in response to the RFP that was put out. Obviously, if it's going to be delayed anytime, of course, not that it'd be a very long time,
Under
but
attachment E.
we'll update the documents accordingly to match with whatever, is in line with your timing.
Next.
Okay.
Oh,
I wouldn't be comfortable borrowing, if we borrow, more than 150 max. So we would have to sharpen the pencil some way. I will approve this tonight, but I can tell you on the second reading, if it comes out to being more than 150, I won't vote for it.
Okay, well, let's have the discussion tonight. Let me ask you this. If we have a $350,000 shortfall, if we were to take the $100,000 from this year, which the manager, assuming the audit goes through, and we have that $100,000, remember, our reserves are already above, wait. The reserves are already at an acceptable percentage, okay? Just this year, we take that $100,000, use it towards this shortfall. That puts us down to $250,000, and we borrow $250,000. Is that a compromise?
No, 150, because I really believe, push comes to shove, our manager can come up with some money out of our budget. There's ways of
I
cutting.
have to say that I don't think that is realistic unless you have concrete suggestions that you can give us about finding $200,000 in the budget, this year's budget. We are only a quarter of the year into the budget, and it would be very disingenuous and irresponsible for me to make $200,000. It's a 10% cut of our budget when we're only a quarter into the year of the budget.
There's places, the only thing we have to supply to the residents that needs to, as a city, is our police. There's a lot of other areas that it will hurt, but it wouldn't kill the city. And we can be looking at those areas to start squeezing, temporary squeezing some money to come up with this.
I can't shut down the building department. I can't shut down
we're-
code and
we're-
compliance.
we're-
I'm going to have the conversation now because I don't want to be set up for failure
No, we're
between
gonna have
first
the
and second
conversation tonight.
reading.
No, I
Yeah.
agree.
We also
80% of
know-
our budget is salaries, and we're already short-staffed, so where are we going to cut?
Then
We
maybe
also
we
know-
need to look at outsourcing some other departments.
We also know that with regard to this project, there, as you said yourself, there are a lot of unknowns. When we start pulling up the floor, pulling out a wall, we're going to be faced with other expenses that the manager's going to have to find a way to finance.
Correct.
Because this 350 is not going to cover those unexpected things.
That's why the manager needs to really take a look. Like I said, if we need to outsource departments, if we need to do layoffs, we need to bite the bullet
That's a big
and do the
policy
right thing.
discussion that I'd like to have with the entire commission. I'm not comfortable with that.
This should have been thought about before we even got this far.
But Commissioner, with all due respect, it has been considered, and it's not realistic to cut $200,000 from our budget without shutting the village down.
Commissioner,
And there are residents that value the use of our parks. I can't shut down the entire park. I can't eliminate that budget. There are residents that call I'm sorry. There's residents call every day with code compliance issues. I can't shut that down. I need to augment that. There's residents that put building permits in on every single day. I can't outsource that. We have one person to answer the phone for the entire village. I have a public works list that doesn't ever end, and I'm 5 guys short with a 5-guy crew. And we are all stretched beyond limits, and I've been very honest and open with the entire commission about that, and I just think it's disingenuous and unrealistic to cut $200,000 off the top from a budget to outsource departments a quarter of the year into the fiscal year and to expect me to find that. I found $74,000 with the excess in revenues from the sale of the sanitation trucks. We've brought money to the table, and we continue to bring money to the table, but I just don't want to leave this discussion between first and second reading expecting us to find $200,000. And I'm sorry.
With all due respect, I think that's absurd. All right, so let's, Commissioner Watts, let's work on you. What is your solution to this issue?
You did that to me with the last contract. No. Here's the thing. I'm uncomfortable with voting for this because if something goes through the first reading and invariably goes through and is accepted on the second reading. And I still don't feel comfortable with this one. I guess it's the one-page sheet that you brought up to Tallahassee had an estimated cost of $1,155,000, and now we're a lot more. It's inflated, and there's so much more to the cost. And when we received the grant, we're all jubilation, but we had, no one said, oh yeah, we're going to have to, take out a loan for another $350,000. So,
Yeah, but,
But wait,
you know,
Commissioner,
wait,
but
wait,
that's
wait.
not fair. Again, I mean, I just feel like after all this, we have to be factual. What we went up with, it's a total project estimate after we deducted the grants and other funding was $1.1 million, like you're correct. But at that, if you see up there, under renovation, construction, and design costs, the renovation of the log cabin was estimated at $300,000. That was before Heisenbottle was done with his work. So that's where the other 200 comes. We were right on target. We were right on target, except he came in at $200,000 above. We didn't inflate the cost. The cost itself became more realistic every step of the way as we went through this lobbying process. Don't forget, the governor signed the budget July 1st. That's what was it, July 1st at midnight. We thought we might actually have the after all those efforts, it came through. And Heisenbottle was done with his study in August.
And Commissioner Watts, this is a long-term vision for the village. This is going to have a long-term impact on the village, and it's only fair that we pay a small portion of this. I mean, it's not common for the state government to give money out to municipalities to build their own buildings. So we're getting $1 million to build our own buildings, and I think it's our obligation to put a little bit in.
That's
and
a very good point. That's a very good point. As the same way that you would take out a mortgage to finance your house or major investments like that, it's paid out over time. And it would be really burdensome to make the current taxpayers in this coming year have to absorb the city's contribution half or almost entirely when that's normally a capital expenditure that is spread out over time exactly the way that it's being proposed in a 15-year mortgage. If, we could always reduce it and pay it back earlier after the 5 years, and that's great. But to say in the next year, we're going to cut our budget by $200,000 and force that burden on the current taxpayers, in other words, force them to do without services because we refuse to spread this investment out over time, that's unfair.
Yeah, and we're working so hard on this commission to elevate this village, to improve this village, and to now cut services and pull things back, and we should not even exist as a village if you want to do that then.
When you go ahead and you need to borrow money, is the time you need to cut back first before you start borrowing. And we need to take a look at it. And this shouldn't have been now. This should have been worked on and presented to us last month's meeting. This month's meeting of where we could be cutting back, what we would lose if we did cut back. We have no options. What is presented to us is we need to borrow $350,000. That's
But
it.
it's completely absurd to think that we can find $350,000 in our budget.
First of all, why are we trying to find it in 1 year? The debt servicing is $32,000 a year, not the $350,000 in 1 year. We're going to be spreading it over 15 years. So the amount every every year we have to fund is only $32,000, not $350,000.
No, I know that.
what if we were to borrow $250,000? How much difference would we'd have to come up with every year? 32,000?
I don't have a calculator in front of me, but
We need 350,000. Bob, I'm sorry to be pointed with you, but you've been a commissioner for a very long time. You were part of some of the commissions that finally decided that they could not manage a village. They didn't have the talent for it and the skills for it, and we now have a professional manager, and that was true. You've been the commissioner of Public Works, which was mismanaged year after year, and we finally decided we should outsource sanitation so somebody could do it right. And I think now is a time for you to stop being in the way and trying to micromanage and tell everybody else what they should do. Let them do it.
I'm looking at being financially prudent here. And I don't think we've got...
It's our manager's job to do that. Have a little vision, have a little courage, and let us do something to improve this village. Don't stand in the way.
I told you, I'm not against borrowing. I'm against
Then
borrowing
go
that
for it.
much.
Let's move on.
Because we
What we need, Bob.
No, I disagree. Because there's been zero options presented to us.
Look at the history
and like I said,
disagreeing.
Okay.
You're not right most of the time. We're getting there, Rosemary.
Commissioner Watts, would
Okay,
you
then
be,
one other thing,
Commissioner Watts, would you be comfortable with the, using the $100,000 from the reserve and borrowing $250,000 to solve the issue?
no, not taking money from the reserve.
No, it's not taking money, it's not in the
It's
reserves
not
yet.
there.
And it wouldn't reduce the reserves to a threshold
know.
that's below what the
I know, but
accepted
I kn-
standard is.
I know the set standard is 15%, but I believe that when it's a small municipality, that the standard fluctuates and changes so that we should have more in the reserves because we're such a small community.
Okay, well, we passed a resolution, 2012, that
Yeah.
established at 15%.
That actually has been my goal to raise it, but 15% is adequate, and someday I hope that we do raise it to 20 or 25. We're just not there yet. I did some quick and dirty numbers, and I'm not a finance person, full disclosure, but when I was thinking about maybe we needed to borrow more instead of less, rounded off figures, at 350, our annual payment is around 32, 31. And at 250, I calculated that the annual payment would be around 22.5 or 6, we'll call it 23. So that's
$5,000 a year.
$5,000 difference a year between 250 and 350. To 4, which is what I thought we needed, was going to be around $36,000. So, I mean, $5,000 a year. Does it merit this lengthy discussion? It is an important step, but we're talking about.
Yeah, and if we continue to wrangle over 5,000, he's probably going to walk out the door, and he's not even going to lend us the money if we think that we
No,
can't.
he promised me he'd sit through the entire thing tonight.
Heidi, apparently there isn't support. Now what?
We're in discussion.
Well, we're
I
under
just-
contract for the construction of a building. And the,
I mean, this is first reading, but I want to have the discussion tonight before we come back for second reading.
I think Commissioner Jonas is asking if this doesn't go forward, what happens to the project? And that's it's a hard discussion to have. You have essentially between the village's pledge of 50,000 and the state match of 50,000 and the excess funds at around 100,000, you have 200,000 to put into the log cabin. The state grant covers the roof, the HVAC, and the electrical. We have a foundation issue that we've discovered this week. Will the exterior logs be able to be done and the clinking around it? I don't know. Will we be able to replace the windows? We have some openings once the additions have to be removed. Dan Keys is in the room, per the state grant requirements. And so once those additions are removed, there are doors that need to be closed. There are windows that have been covered up and have no window panes in them that need to be replaced. And I'm not sure we have the funds to do that.
We can't do it all. We're $350,000 short. Now what happens? We're not going to be able to get to 350. That's it.
You don't start the log cabin. That's my recommendation.
Okay.
And will we jeopardize our grant if we don't do
No,
what we
because it's a
promised?
reimbursable grant and we,
Then that's the answer.
so you will have a new annex building, you will have an empty log cabin building
With a leaking roof.
with a
and
leaking
foundation
roof,
that's
a
failing.
foundation that's held up by cinder block.
But we have two commissioners who can be proud of that.
All right.
Would you guys mind circling back to what Commissioner Ross said? It's only gotten a slight amount of play. Can't you guys discuss postponing the closing date so that the first payment doesn't come till next fiscal year? That was a brilliant suggestion, but it kind of got lost in everything else.
I was really leaving that up to the manager to decide negotiating the contract and when the closing date's going to be.
It's really a discussion, and I think if you're willing to have it right now, is how long will the bank hold the interest rate?
correct.
Yeah, that was my next
I mean, we're talking
question.
That would go
October
past,
1st.
yeah.
I mean, that's not obviously a question I can answer right now. I mean, that's something I would have to find out for you. You know, for the very near future, obviously, it really shouldn't change, but, 2, 3, 4, 5 months down the line, depending on how long you all take, I mean, that could all change. And in the grand scope of things, you also have to consider, I started having these conversations with the village when I came on board as a banker, and these requests were much larger. So now that you have this financing in place, I guess you'd have to consider if you continue to push back what's happening and the interest rate environment that will soon, at some point, start going up. Later in the game, if you need to address these things, then you're going to be facing a higher cost at that point.
Which is exactly what you had pointed to. It's yet another example of us delaying, and it end up costing us significantly more.
Mayor?
And realistically, two things, having done this at a lot of cities, there's no bank that's going to hold that rate until October 1st in check, but there's not going to happen. And we can't move forward without a commitment of funds to do the project.
We can't enter into a
Outside of-
contract for
exactly.
the restoration without a
We can do the
commitment of
annexation
full
because of
funds.
the million.
Can we declare that we have failed and just surrender this and move on and
Well,
whatever
no,
happens,
I mean,
happens?
this is first reading, so we could vote on
Yeah,
first.
let's have a vote.
We can vote on first reading, correct, and then.
Well,
No, if we get voted down, then.
if an ordinance fails on first reading, it doesn't move forward.
So,
Yeah, I would.
Motion in favor of this ordinance.
Do you want to do a straw vote? Do you want to
We
do
have
a,
a motion.
do a straw
Don't-
vote again?
Yeah, there's a
Okay.
second, but we don't have the vote.
Do you
we
want to do
hear
a straw
from-
vote again?
can we hear
Yes.
from the public?
Yes, by all means,
Because
come
the
help.
people who wrote to
Well,
me
let's vote it
were
down
very
then.
much against it.
No.
Yeah.
Everybody in this room either has or has had a mortgage on their home. They wouldn't live here, probably would not been able to afford to live here if they didn't put a mortgage on their home. Basically what we have. Bob, it's $350,000. $31,000 a year, right?
37.
Okay.
31.
$31,000 a year, okay? In any budget process, any year, you can find $31,000. We found what, $250,000, $300,000 over the past 5, 6 years when we had the downturn in the economy. This is a necessary evil, honestly. I mean, it's a no-brainer kind of. Commissioner, same thing. This is rubber hitting the road here. We have a plan, an amazing $1.1 million that somebody's given us, okay? And all we got to do is come up with $31,000 a year, okay? Take $5,000 from each department in the city, and you got the money. This shouldn't be a problem. It really should not be a nervous question based on the facts that we have here. We have an improving environment with our revenue in the city, and that may not last forever. Absolutely, we've seen it happen, and certainly can happen again. Okay, but we have some things on the horizon that might increase our revenue, and generally the trend is going up with real estate and so forth that should help us out. But I go back to the fact that in any budget year, in a budget of our size, we can find $31,000 to make this payment. And by all means, if we can find $130,000 and at the end of 5 years have the cash to pay off the loan, I encourage you to do it. Some of us may have paid off our mortgages early just to get that little extra at the end of our mortgage. I say, have the confidence, Bob, that there's enough people in the community that support this decision. I don't know who I'm speaking for, but I believe those people are here. I just don't think that's big a deal. When you look at people moving into the community, borrowing $400,000, $500,000 to buy a house in the community, they say, yeah, $350,000 and I get $1.1 million in the deal. Sounds like a good deal. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Anyone else?
I'd like Dr. Morris to go.
Doc Morris.
Doc Morris, 734 Northeast 119th Street. Well, it looks like we're going to have to do it. It looks like you got $1.1 million and you're $350,000 short, the way I look at it. And if you don't do it, we're going to have a problem. You've already started on the building, so you're going to have to complete that. And if you could hold off doing anything with the log cabin, that would be the obvious thing in my opinion. But it all boils down to fiduciary responsibility. You really have to look at this ahead of time. You have to be aware of all these things ahead of time. I'm involved with a $78 million hospital, and
Doc,
you know what?
Doc, we were aware of these things at a time. This was this was.
Well, you have
discussed.
to excuse me because, like I say, I was at a hospital meeting since 5 o'clock this afternoon. You know, so I don't hear a lot of these things, and unfortunately, I have that meeting every single time you have these meetings. But unfortunately, I don't see any other alternative. I agree with Bob. I would maybe take $100,000 out of the reserve, even though I don't like taking money out of reserve, but it would at least decrease your loan. And I would try to pay this loan off as fast as I could. You know, I agree with Danny. You know, if you can come up with the money every year, pay the darn thing off. Just make sure you don't have a pre-penalty on the loan, because sometimes they don't allow you to do that. I would look into that.
No, we have that addressed. How many years we can prepay it?
It's
5 years.
5 years.
Okay, so you have to have it 5 years. I'd pay this thing off in 5 years if it was me. Unfortunately, I don't see any other alternative with what you have to do. And the residents are just going to have to bite the bullet. That's the way it is.
Barbara Kuehl, 111th Street. When we were talking about the method to proceed with this, the people that came, that spoke, and the commission were in agreement to get it done right all at once, not to wait, because it does cost more when you do it piecemeal. $31,000, even though I was not in agreement with the proposal that the manager put forward in her backup material, you know, it's my suggestion. It's $31,000 this village can find it, and I don't know if it was Dan or Doc said take 5% out of each, $5,000 out of each department. Once you pass this, then you can discuss. You have to go forward. You're already here. What are you going to do? Have half a building? It's crazy. The community was in favor of going forward with this, and now you just need to figure out the best way to where to get the money. But there won't be a problem paying this back. So bite the bullet, and it's not the residents that seem to be in disfavor. It's some of the commissioners. So bite the bullet, and then figure out the best way to allocate the money. But you definitely can do this loan, and you should do it now before it does go up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Chuck Ross. I think one of the issues is that when this building was first discussed, there was an additional cost that was added in for putting the police in the annex. And there was an option to put them in Public Works, but there was people who spoke, and that added cost to the project. So I think that if there was, at that time, if there was a concern, and we knew pretty much what it was going to cost at that point. If there was a concern about borrowing the amount of money, it was easy to do the math that we're going to need at least 300 grand or so. Then that's when we should have talked about, okay, wait a minute, okay, maybe we can't afford to borrow 300 grand. Maybe we need to do something else and reconfigure make it a smaller building. But we already committed to that. So we're kind of in the middle of the project. The other thing is, I'm going to reiterate, I think 4.25 is a cheap interest rate, and I do agree with everything that Barbara just said. We can find $31,000 a year in the budget. And I would ask the banker, and I don't know what he's even thought about, or if this is a possibility, is can we spread it over 20 years? I know there's more interest, but I'm just asking. 15, yeah. That's what I thought. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just wondering. But, you know, it would be a little less of a burden, but, you know, I think I looked at interest rates there. In fact, I was going to mention, I got a client that just bought a piece of property. It was $1.5 million loan on a vacant piece of land, and the interest rate was 5.05%. And that was on a secured existing building. They didn't do it on the land. They refinanced the building for 5.05, and no rates are going to go up. So we're in the middle of the project. I thought everybody I heard they were in consensus to get it done and done properly, and I'm sure we'll find the money. I don't think that's a concern, and apparently our manager's doing a good job. She's being fiscally responsible rather. We have, from what it sounds like, everything holds up. We'll have some extra money in the budget. I know properties are being sold at higher values. One just went on the market for almost $1 million. You probably heard about that one. It's a beautiful piece of property. $1 million property in Biscayne Park. We haven't seen that in a while. So I think for all of everything that everybody has said tonight, we've all spoken in favor of moving forward with the project. So I would ask you to please, those that don't believe that we should finance $350,000 to really at least move forward on the first reading and see if if there's something that the manager can come up with between now and then. But I don't see how we could possibly shave, and I don't think it's even fair to shave a significant number off our current budget and impact our current residents. It makes more sense when you spread it out over 15 years, because that way it's being equally shared with future residents and not just impacting the people who live here now. So please reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. All right, anyone else? Thank you. Barbara, back to you.
Yeah, well, I just can't help but think of some of the emails that I received, and people who didn't know about this, had no idea. They thought we were just going to get $1 million and build this thing. And the couple of people who wrote said, well, wait a minute, if we were going broke, and the sky is falling, we never said what he said. Our expenses were going up every year, and we didn't have enough money, and that's why we need to do annexation and all of this stuff. Then why are we borrowing $350,000?
And that's your reason for blocking this project?
No, but I'm just telling you what.
But the payback is only $31,000 a year.
Yeah, what we're trying to accomplish with annexation is to not just get by every year, but have a substantial amount of money to make substantial improvements in the village, and again, elevate this village. So we're not talking about $35,000. Of course we can find that. We're talking about significantly increasing the revenue of the village. Commissioner Watts, would you entertain?
300.
I'm sorry?
300.
No, I still go back to again, we have this $100,000 that has yet to go into reserves. Would you entertain borrowing $250,000 and using the $150,000 towards this project? And that way we'll still sustain the accepted percentage of reserves with the $400,000.
I just feel uncomfortable taking money out of the reserves that was intended.
Okay, but then if you're uncomfortable with that, then let's just go with the $350,000, because as Commissioner Ross pointed out, the debt service is not much different per year. Right? What was the difference?
Right. The difference, just my calculation, which is from between $350 and $250, was about $6,000 a year. So is it worth really restraining ourselves to have a $6,000 savings, and then down the road find that we're actually going to come up short and not be able to finish the project?
This is not about whether we can do this. This is about protesting.
Mayor?
And it's empty. I could possibly vote for this, providing that the money that's the $16,577 and what's in the contingency, the $20,000, go into our reserves. That is not, the money is not, that is not being used. That goes into our reserves.
So we're not.
So the first year's, we're not covering it
voting on
with that.
We're just voting on borrowing the money. We're not voting on where it's
Well,
going.
I'm just,
Okay, so you'll support
I
this
will
ordinance.
support this, but I want to, the next reading, I want to see that this money is not going to be touched. That goes into our reserves. The payments will be coming from someplace else, out of the budget.
In the current year?
in this current year.
You mean both the contingency of $20,000 and the quote return to reserves of 16.5?
That goes in, that is to be earmarked for the reserves only. That is not to be touched for this loan.
For year one of the payment.
Correct, because that
Yeah, I
only
mean, I don't-
exists on year one.
Okay.
Which is really about half a year payment, which is about 15 to 16,000.
Right.
So we have to cut, what Commissioner Anderson is saying is that we would have to cut 15 to 16,000 from other places in the budget. Or I would like to offer fine extra revenue of 15 to 16,000.
Okay, fine. So you'll support it?
I will,
Okay, will you
because we're
amend-
going to have to do this each year.
No, no,
Because
that-
along comes next year's budgeting, it's going to have to come out of the budget somewhere.
But you're not gonna micromanage how we pay back the debt service every year. That's.
No, what I'm saying is realistically, we should be able to do it this year, just like we're going to have to do it
Okay.
for the next 14 years or whatever.
Okay, so
Let's
you,
take
but.
a roll call vote.
I'll support
Okay,
it.
so we'll call.
I'll
so you'll
support it.
Okay. A motion by Vice Mayor Jonas, second by Commissioner Ross. Roll call.
Thank you. Commissioner Watts?
No.
Commissioner Ross?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jonas? And Mayor Coviello?
Yes.
Woohoo.
All right, so motion, ordinance passes on first reading. Moving on
Barbara, we just got that on tape.
to
Look, and you're the closest.
item 10B.
Item 10B, Resolution 2015-4, 15 Days of Neighborly Love. We tried this last year or the year before. Something I picked up from Miami-Dade County Commissioner Jose Pepe Diaz. He inspired me to bring this to the village, and it's basically raising awareness and raising an initiative to help encourage residents to participate in 15 Days of Neighborly Love, February 14 to 28, to work in concert and contribute by reaching out to neighbors and others who regularly service our village, ease someone's burden, brighten their day with an unexpected act of kindness, a small gift, pat on the back, or just a big smile. And I have a resolution drafted up for the Commission's consideration. One of my first contributions for the Neighborly Love Initiative will be to bring a big pot of chili to the village staff's birthday lunch. And similar to that, I would encourage people to just reach out to their neighbors and just help lighten up their day or their burden. We don't know what other people face and what challenges other people face in their daily lives. And it's just a good opportunity to reach out to our neighbors. So I make a motion that we approve Resolution 2015-4.
Second? Anybody?
Seconded?
I'm waiting.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any comments?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Opposed? No.
Mayor, that was included
4-0.
you?
4-0. Dave wasn't here.
Mayor, did you vote or no?
No, I wasn't here, but I'll vote yes. Thank you. All right, old business, nothing, new business, nothing. Request for placement of items on next agenda. Anything?
Yes, I have something.
Okay, Commissioner Anderson.
What I'd like to have is a discussion about the train horns and to see about possibly contacting other municipalities along the tracks that maybe we could team up together.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Okay. I'd like to have a discussion about the train horns since they're louder. Even though they claim that they're not, they are. And to team up with other municipalities along with the tracks so we can have one voice, because in one more year, it's supposed to be a quiet zone down there. I don't understand why that couldn't have been postponed for the 1 year. They jumped right into it and no notification to any of us. And per the manager says the federal government, said that they needed to do this.
Right.
I don't think the federal government heard from anybody saying, what, can you postpone it for 1 year, but you're having a quiet zone?
Okay, so we'll add that on for the next agenda.
It's
Anything
a
else?
discussion.
As a
That was it.
discussion, right. Anything else? Nothing? Okay. Anything else? All right. Reports?
Oh, just one thing.
Yes.
Do you think we could have an update? I know we talked about this earlier, just on the plumbing issue with Miami, if anything can be done.
On the what?
Or the water. Water.
Yes. Sure.
Is there any way to make any progress?
I'm gonna, when we meet with the mayor on the annexation, I'm gonna raise the issue
Right.
also, so.
We consciously, because of the annexation issue,
Oh.
would prefer not to cause another issue, because when we did it originally, it was its own separate issue.
Oh, okay.
So I think we're trying to get, before March 3rd anyway, past the annexation, and that's what we're waiting for.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
All righty. All right, let's go to the village manager reports.
I have no additional update on annexation. Usually I try to update you, but
Yep.
you had a really great update from Jeff Kazu earlier. Anything you want to talk about the log cabin restoration? Nope. Okay, thank you. Actually, I do have a Gantt chart for you. Yeah, we do have construction is progressing very nicely. I hope you guys go by a lot. We go by out there every morning and check in on it. They're framing out for the foundation pourings right now. They could not pour today as was planned because they had an electrical inspection for today, which needed to pass for the grounding of the building. And hopefully within the next day or two, we'll start to see concrete trucks, which is what I'm really looking forward to out there. But the project is moving right along. On the Gantt chart that you have in front of you, you'll see that it says we should be out to bid right now for the restoration, but for the reasons we were talking about before, with them finding some extra things underneath the log cabin, or lack thereof of the extra things under the log cabin, the plans are not ready yet. This is on the top of the next page, release of RFP for log cabin restoration. So as soon as we have that from the architect, the final plans, we will be going out to bid on that project. Chapter 5, proposed code changes update. We've met as a joint board between the Parks and Parkways Board and the Code Review Board twice in the month of January. We will be meeting again on February 18th at 6:30. It's a Wednesday here at the Ed Burke Recreation Center. I encourage all residents to come out because this language is constantly changing. The board seemed to be listening to the feedback that they're receiving from those who are in attendance, as well as those sending communication in, and no final decisions have been made. Our hope is at the 18th meeting there will be some resolution, and we'll be able to forward that at least in the ordinance, not in the ordinance form, but in the code change form to the commission, so that the commission can start the review of the board's recommendations. Regarding the community signage project, we are out to bid right now for landscape architect services to design community signs around the village, as well as associated landscaping. We are looking for licensed landscape architects to bid on this project. The bids are due February 25th, and included in the request is asking them to provide a schematic of what they think our signage might look like. Not with the final design, but so we can kind of see what their artistic thoughts and styles are. And it also forces them to come into the village and look around. We've been sending it out to landscape architectural firms, as well as the larger firms that have everything in-house, and asking around for any recommendations. So if any residents know of landscape architects here in the village, licensed landscape architects, not landscapers, but landscape architects, please forward them our way. The RFQ is on the village website. And that's my update for this evening.
Okay, Madam Manager, thank you.
Manager, what I wanted to do was discuss a little bit about the bathrooms.
Yes.
On the night of the Food and Tunes, people emailed you, and you emailed me back, that the sinks were removed because they were not secure, and after one of them had, fell, you had them removed for safety reasons, and I applauded you for doing that. Then I asked, is if the sinks inspection by our plumbing inspector on another email, and your email answered back basically, the previous work that was done, it was through an informal inspection. And I emailed you back, what is an informal inspection? I don't follow that.
Yes, and I offered to sit down with you and go over this.
I'd like to hear that because some of the residents here are
Sure.
curious too.
The informal inspection falls under no good deed goes unturned, and that was that our inspectors came out, they reviewed the work, but they did not sign off on the permits. We have been talking to our inspectors, and they understand that going forward on all work now, that they're required to sign off on the permits.
But we had permits out for that original bathroom.
Yes, permits have been posted.
I mean,
for the
not
project.
now, not with the work we're doing now, that's different. I'm talking about the original work.
It's the same, it's all the work is being done under the same permit that was originally posted when the project
So our
began.
inspectors didn't sign off on it.
Correct, but we were told that they came by.
Okay.
And we, that sometimes, it's, no good deed goes unturned. It's the same thing that happens sometimes with some of our residents. The inspector might come by and give some feedback or information, and they're not signing off on it. And we've really been working with our inspectors to try to standardize their practices and make sure everything is signed off every visit so that we have a better tracking of it. And Christian, if you'd like to discuss, because you've been on the inspectors this past couple weeks about this issue.
You're absolutely right. We should have them all signed off, and going forward we will.
But previously on the first time around, none of the inspectors signed off, like the electrical
None of
inspectors?
the inspectors had signed off on the first round. And so, and my understanding.
I think that's a major issue.
I agree, and it's been addressed, believe me. And so, I think we got a little courtesy because we are the village. They do work for us. And so I told them that on any further construction projects, we're by the book. I want them to be harder on us than they are on residents because our buildings and our work has to last. And additionally, there will be signatures on every permit, and there are. If you go look at the permits in the windows, we're getting signatures now.
Because, we're really fortunate that when that sink fell, there wasn't a child in there that it could have fallen on. And to me, I really, it sounds like the inspector was derelict in his doing his job.
I don't know how to address that, to be honest with you. I wasn't there to see that happen. That project was nearing completion when I arrived here, so my hands weren't in that a whole lot.
No, I'm not.
No,
I'm blaming.
Me.
I have a concern with the inspection.
Oh, absolutely.
Not with you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And to me, I think we need to address then, maybe through Sal, that particular inspector, because we're fortunate. Like I said, if that fell on a child.
The inspectors
had
are
an issue problem.
independent contractors, and it's all been addressed with them, and I can quote the conversation I overheard Christian, I was listening in, sorry, in his office, which was, quote, "I'm not looking for any favors. I want to be clear. This is not acceptable." That message was delivered. I can't reassure you any more than stating that to you, and Christian has now restated that.
And I will reassure you, I will be looking for those signatures, and those inspections will happen. And on top of that, I'm there as much as I can be as well, looking over shoulders.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Christian, thank you. Oh, go ahead. Oh, with that issue? Okay. Mr. Village Attorney?
Thank you, Mayor. Two items, and I'll just remind the commission that the new state law, there's a requirement for all of you to receive a minimum of 4 hours of training, 2 in ethics, 1 in sunshine law, 1 in public records law, open meetings law and public records law. So I think the best way to work this out would be if and when you do receive credits, if you can just report it to Maria, and then we'll keep track of it. If necessary towards the end of the year. Florida League of Cities has a lot of free programs, and that's a great way to do it. But if toward the end of the year, if the whole commission is missing an hour or something, maybe we could work one in during a workshop, whatever you like. But I just want to remind you, while it's still early in the year, that's a state law requirement.
How many hours again?
Four. 2 in ethics, 1 in open meetings, part of the Sunshine Law, and the other one in public records, part of the Sunshine Law.
You know, League of Cities says that they were looking at to be able to set something up where you could be able to do it online.
Yes, in
Correct.
fact,
Yeah.
I'll email, I saw it today,
Miami-Dade County League of Cities is trying to work on something like that.
and I think the Florida League of Cities sent something out late today. I didn't have a chance to open it. If so, I'll BCC all of you with that information. Key is to track it and give it to Maria in case it comes up, because they do monitor that at some level. And then the second issue is to remind everybody that the board appointments for the vast majority of our boards come up in March. As you know, we have an omnibus ordinance. The ordinance covers almost all of our boards. And while looking at it, one of the boards that we really wanted to cover was the Planning and Zoning Board. And the Planning and Zoning Board, we've looked at the way it's set up it's in the Land Development Code. It's in Chapter 13 partly, which is the LPA, the local planning agency, and also for permits, and then it's also in Chapter 15. However, the way it's set up, it doesn't allow for alternates. It also doesn't, it has a 2-year appointment, actually. But the intent, and having spoken with Maria and having looked at our notes, was to include the Planning and Zoning Board. Code Enforcement Board is Chapter 162 Florida statute, so that's outside of this board, of the omnibus. So what I'm suggesting to you, and I had a brief email exchange with Gage, they're not looking into it at all. I think I could do a change to put them together so that the ordinance makes better sense, the Planning and Zoning Board ordinance, and also not to address the appointment process and the number of members, so it goes under the omnibus ordinance where really it should be. It would really take, to combine the two, it would take an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours at most of my time. I think it's $85, Maria, to advertise the ordinance. And also what we found is that the ordinance, which is in the hard copy that's in between, is the code enforcement ordinance, but it's not showing up on MuniCode, which has caused an issue with those appointments, which would be what we'll bring back to you next month. So I'm asking for authorization. Technically, it's interesting, we did pass a resolution in 2013 that if a commissioner wanted to bring up an ordinance, that it would have to be a resolution to start, so the village attorney wouldn't expend any cost. I'm actually bringing this up, and those of you who've been on the commission for a long time, I tend not to do this. I tend to not sensitive of the cost, but I think it's confusing the way it is. It's contrary to the intent and what we meant, and it can be rather quickly fixed, and it would be a better ordinance. So
Okay. I make a motion to go ahead and support the rewriting of the ordinance as our attorney talked about.
I'll second that.
All right, motion by Commissioner Anderson, second by Commissioner Ross. All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah. And I forgot, David, for the matters of discussion, there are a couple of things that I'd like to bring up that are in the code, one pertaining to boards, like the number of people on certain boards.
For next meeting? Or?
For next meeting.
Okay.
And then also something about the definitions of family that maybe should be updated.
Okay.
I forgot about that.
You want that to add to
For
Discussion.
discussion, yeah. I'm
That's
sorry.
all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
I knew there was something in my mind I couldn't remember.
Okay, Commissioner Ross, you wanted to speak about MLK Day?
Yeah, real quick, the weather was...
I'm sorry, we don't have any committee reports? No. Okay, sorry.
Weather was great last Saturday when over 25 people, volunteers, came to spruce up 6th Avenue on the approach, and we planted not the whole 400, but close to 400 golden creepers. They look really nice, and I want to, in particular, thank staff that was there on hand, gave up their Saturday morning to be with us. Shalisa Bartley, Cesar Hernandez, John Jenkins, Mylin Nguyen, Christian Manners, Heidi Shaffron, and our contractor, Waste Pro. They came out to help. Also, the residents, of course, that came out, and not only came out to help, but also opened up their checkbooks and wrote some donations, and we were able to collect, so far, $1,025. So thank you, everyone, for participating and for making it a successful event.
Well, thank you for organizing it and taking lead on it. So wonderful.
Thank you.
What's the plan for the money?
Well, I will turn it over right now to the village manager, and it'll just be in the kitty for more landscaping.
I just have just one comment. I have tremendous respect for Commissioner Watson, for Commissioner Anderson, and I know you're committed to the village, and we may disagree on certain things, and I apologize if I was too strong in any way, but we just can agree to disagree on this one. So thank you. Okay, anything else? Announcements.
Wednesday, February 4th is the Code Review Board at 7 p.m. No, I'm sorry, they canceled that meeting, so no code review tomorrow. Sorry. Saturday, February 7th, we have another Walk-a-Hound, Lose-a-Pound at 9 a.m. Monday, February 9th is the Biscayne Park Foundation at 7 p.m. Tuesday, February 10th is Code Compliance Board at 7 p.m. Wednesday, February 11th is the Public Art Advisory Board at 6 p.m. Thursday, February 12th is the Charter Review Advisory Board at 7 p.m. Monday, February 16th, all village departments are closed in observance of President's Day. Tuesday, February 17th, Planning and Zoning Board at 6:30 p.m. Tuesday, February 17th, Ecology Board at 6:30 p.m. Wednesday, February 18th, Parks and Parkway Advisory Board at 6 p.m. Followed by Wednesday, February 18th, the Code Review Board and Parks and Parkway joint meeting starting at 6:30 p.m. to conclude the discussion on Chapter 5. Saturday, February 21st, we have an e-waste collection event from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. This is where you'll be able to bring all those old printers and phones and everything.
Thank you to the Ecology Board.
Thank you very much to the Ecology Board for putting that together. On the same night, after you clean out the closet, you can come to movie night in the park at 6 p.m. Tuesday, February 24th is the Recreation Advisory Board at 7 p.m. Thursday, February 26th is Charter Review Advisory Board at 7 p.m. Monday, February 2nd, Planning and Zoning Board at 6 p.m. And our next regular commission meeting is Tuesday, March 3rd at 7 p.m.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?